Hi guys. Tonight we drift quietly into the world of the pioneers as a great storm rolls across the plains. The sun is sinking behind the hills, and the light is turning a pale, cold yellow. The air is becoming very sharp, feeling like ice against your cheeks. The wind is coming off the flat land like a cold river, finding every tiny gap in your heavy clothes. You can hear the dry brown grass snapping under your boots as you take your last steps for the day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now dim the lights and let the story begin. You are standing on a vast, flat piece of land. In the 19th century, many people moved across this land in what they called wagon trains. A wagon train was a long line of wooden carts pulled by oxen or horses, all travelling together for safety. It is late autumn, and the world is turning a dull, dusty brown. You look up at the sky. It does not look like the sky you saw this morning. The bright blue has been replaced by a heavy, bruised purple colour. The clouds are thick and low. They look like big, soft pillows filled with heavy lead. You feel a shiver go down your back. It is not just the cold. It is the feeling of being very small in a very big place. There are no houses here. There are no trees to break the wind. There are no fences or roads. There is only the grass, the sky, and the long, slow path ahead of you. You are wearing a shirt made of linsey-woolsey. This is a special kind of cloth that pioneers made by weaving linen and wool together. It is rough against your skin and smells a little bit like sheep and old soap. It is a strong shirt, but the wind is starting to bite through it now. You turn your head to look at the oxen. These are large, slow cows that pull the heavy wagon. They are puffing out big clouds of white breath. The breath looks like steam from a kettle. The oxen know something is coming. They are tossing their heads and making low, worried sounds in their throats. Their big, dark eyes are wide. You reach out and touch the side of the wagon. The wood is cold and rough. This wagon has been your home for many months. It carries everything you own, your tools, your bags of flour, your extra blankets, and your hopes for a new life. The wind picks up a bit more. It makes a long, low whistling sound as it moves through the dry grass. It sounds like someone is blowing across the top of a glass bottle. You watch a small piece of tumbleweed roll past your boots. It moves so fast that it looks like a ghost running across the dirt. You realize that the temperature is dropping very quickly. A few minutes ago, your hands felt okay, but now your fingers are starting to feel stiff. You tuck them into your armpits to keep them warm. Everything is becoming very quiet. On the trail, there is usually the sound of people talking, the clack of wooden wheels, and the thud of heavy hooves. But now, the other people in your group are not talking. They are moving fast. They are pulling their coats tight. They are looking at that wall of dark clouds in the north. This is what the old-timers called a blue norther. It is a storm that comes on so fast that the sky turns blue-black and the air turns to ice in just a few minutes. You take a deep breath. The air feels thin and dry. It hurts the inside of your nose a little bit. You look at the horizon one last time. The sun has almost disappeared now. Only a thin line of orange remains, like a glowing coal in a fire that is going out. The rest of the world is turning grey. The shadows are growing long and thin. They reach out across the grass like dark fingers. You feel a sense of hurry in your chest. You need to get inside. You need to find some cover before the white flakes start to fall. You look at the canvas top of your wagon. It is a big, thick sheet of heavy cloth stretched over wooden hoops. Usually it keeps the sun off your head and the light rain away, but tonight it looks very thin. It looks like a small bit of protection against such a big, angry sky. You see a small tear in the fabric near the front. It flaps in the wind, making a snap, snap, snap sound. You think about how you should have fixed that yesterday when the sun was warm. Now it is too late. The light is almost warm. Now it is too late. The light is almost gone. You stand there for a moment in the silence. The wind has stopped for a second, and the world feels like it is holding its breath. It is that strange, heavy stillness that happens right before a big change. You can hear your own heart beating softly in your ears. You can hear the creak of the wagon as it settles into the soft dirt. You feel very alone, even though there are other wagons nearby. In a storm like this, every person has to find their own way to stay warm. Every person has to face the dark on their own. You see the first flake of snow. It is not like the soft, pretty snow in a picture book. This flake is hard and small. like a tiny grain of salt. It hits your hand and does not melt right away. It just sits there, white and cold. Then another one hits your cheek, then another. The wind starts to howl again, but this time it sounds different. It sounds sharper. It sounds like it is angry. The orange line on the horizon is gone now. The world is a deep, dark grey. You can no longer see where the land ends and the sky begins. It all looks like one big, cold shadow. You know that the trail is gone for the night. You cannot move forward anymore. You have to stop right here and wait. You have to trust that your wagon and your blankets will be enough. You move toward the back of the wagon. Your boots make a heavy thump on the ground. The ground is already starting to feel harder as the frost sinks into the dirt. You reach for the wooden ladder at the back. Your hands are so cold now that it is hard to grip the smooth wood. You have to move slowly. You have to be careful. If you slip and hurt yourself now, there is no doctor to call. There is no warm house to go into. There is only the wagon and the storm. You look up at the dark shape of the wagon. It looks like a giant white-topped loaf of bread sitting in the middle of a dark sea. You pull yourself up, feeling the strain in your tired legs. As you climb, you look back one last time at the oxen. They are huddling together, their shoulders touching. They are trying to share the heat of their big bodies. You wish you could bring them inside with you, but there is no room. They are tough animals, built for this life, but you still feel a pang of worry for them. The wind hits you full in the face as you reach the top of the ladder. It carries a cloud of that salt-like snow. It stings your eyes and makes you blink. You duck your head and push your way through the heavy canvas flaps at the back of the wagon. The air inside is a little bit stiller, but it is not warm. It smells of dry flour, old wood, and the leather of the harnesses. You are inside now. The world outside is disappearing into a swirl of white and grey. You are safe from the wind for a moment, but you know the real test is just beginning. The night shift has started. It is not a shift where you do work with your hands. It is a shift where you have to stay still and stay alive. You settle down onto a pile of sacks, feeling the hard shapes of the grain beneath you. You wrap your arms around your knees and listen. The storm is hitting the side of the wagon now with a sound like dry beans being thrown against a wall. The long wait has begun. You are now fully inside the wagon, leaving the cold, grey world behind you for a moment. As you pull the heavy canvas flap shut, the light fades even more. It is dim and dusty in here. This wagon is your only home now. Many people called these wagons Prairie schooners. They gave them that name because, from a distance, the white canvas tops looked like the sails of a ship moving across a big green sea of grass. But inside, it does not feel like a ship. It feels like a small wooden box packed tight with everything you need to stay alive. You reach out and touch the side of the wagon. The walls are made of thick, hard wood. Most wagons like this were built from oak or hickory. You can feel the grain of the wood under your fingertips. It is rough and honest. It feels strong, which is good, because it has to hold up against the weight of the storm. This wood was cut and shaped by hand many months ago. You can still feel the marks where a sharp tool carved the planks. It smells faintly of old trees and dried sap. Below you, the floor of the wagon is covered with heavy sacks and wooden crates. You have to move carefully so you do not trip in the dark. You find a small spot to sit down. As you settle your weight, the wagon gives a low, deep groan. It is the sound of heavy wood rubbing against heavy wood. It is a comforting sound in a way. It tells you that the wagon is solid. It tells you that it is rooted to the ground. You think about the wheels outside. They are huge wooden circles with iron bands around the outside to keep them from breaking on the rocks. Hanging underneath the back of the wagon is a very important tool. It is a grease bucket, or what some people call a tar bucket. It is a small wooden pail filled with a mix of pine tar and lard. Every day, someone has to use that thick, smelly grease to keep the wheels turning smoothly. Without that grease, the wooden axles would get too hot and might even catch fire from the rubbing. Even now, you can smell a tiny bit of that tar. It is a sharp, smoky smell that reminds you of the long miles you have already travelled. The wind hits the side of the wagon again. The whole wagon shakes just a little bit. You feel the vibration through the floor and up into your legs. It is a strange feeling to be inside something that is being pushed so hard by the air. You look up at the hoops that hold up the roof. These are long, curved pieces of wood that arch over your head like the ribs of a giant animal. They are bent into a perfect half circle. The canvas is stretched tight over them. When the wind blows hard, The canvas makes a booming sound, like a big drum. You sit very still for a minute. In the silence between the gusts of wind, you can hear the small sounds of the wagon settling. You hear a tin plate rattle against a cooking pot. You hear the soft crinkle of a paper map tucked into a side pocket. These are the sounds of your life. Every item in here was chosen because it was needed. There is no room for things that are just pretty. There is only room for things that work. The air in here is already starting to change. Outside, the air is thin and sharp, but inside, it feels a bit thicker. It carries the scent of the things you are carrying. There is the smell of salt pork kept in a barrel. There is the dusty, sweet smell of dried apples. And there is the smell of the canvas itself. The cloth was treated with oil to help keep the rain out, and that oil has a heavy, earthy scent that fills the small space. You reach into your pocket and pull out the small piece of string. You find yourself twisting it between your fingers. It is a simple thing to do, but it helps you feel calm. You are looking for a place to stay safe, and you have found it. This wooden box is only about 10 feet long and 4 feet wide. It is not much bigger than a bed in a normal house. But right now, it feels like a castle. It is the only thing standing between you and the freezing white world outside. You lean your back against a crate of tools. You can feel the cold metal of a saw blade through the thin wood of the box. It feels like a cold line against your spine. You move a little bit to find a softer spot. You find a sack filled with wool fleeces. It is lumpy and smells like a wet dog, but it is much softer than the tool crate. You lean back and let out a long, slow breath. Your breath comes out in a faint white cloud. Even inside, it is getting colder. You think about the journey so far. You remember the hot sun of the summer and the deep mud of the spring. You remember how the dust used to get into everything, making your teeth feel gritty. Now, you would give anything for a bit of that heat. The winter has come early, and it has come with a heavy hand. You realize that you are not just hiding from a storm. You are hiding from the season itself. The wagon is a very clever piece of building. The front wheels are smaller than the back wheels, so the wagon can turn in tight circles. The body of the wagon is built like a boat, with the ends higher than the middle. This was done so that when you go up or down a steep hill, your heavy bags of flour do not all slide out the back. You feel the slope of the floor now. The wagon is tilted just a little bit to the left. It makes you feel like you are tucked into a small cradle. You close your eyes for a moment. You listen to the pat, pat, pat of the first heavy bits of snow hitting the roof. It is a very lonely sound. It reminds you that there is nothing else out there for miles and miles. No towns, no shops, no warm parlors with glowing fires. There is just you, this wood, and the canvas. You have to trust the people who built this wagon. You have to trust that the oak is strong enough and the iron is tough enough. You feel a sense of respect for this heavy wooden machine. It has carried you over mountains and across wide rivers. It has been your kitchen, your bedroom, and your storehouse. And now it is your shield. You reach out and pat the wooden side of the wagon, the way you might pat a loyal horse. Stay strong, you think. Just keep the wind out. The darkness is almost total now. You can only see the faint shapes of the things around you. The white canvas above you glows with a very dim, ghostly light from the snow outside. It is a cold light. It does not give off any warmth, but it lets you see where the hoops are. You watch the canvas move. It ripples and sways as the wind tries to find a way inside. But the ropes are tied tight. The knots are holding. You pull your feet up onto the sack of wool. You want to stay off the floor as much as possible. The floor is where the cold stays. You wrap your arms around your legs and tuck your chin into your chest. You are as small as you can be. You are making yourself into a little ball of heat. You listen to the wind as it starts to roar. It sounds like a train passing by or a great waterfall, but inside the heavy wooden wagon, you are in your own little world. It is a dark world, and it is a cold world, but it is yours. You are safe for now. You are hidden. The storm can scream all it wants, but it cannot get through the thick oak walls. You take a slow, deep breath and wait for the next part of the night. The darkness inside the wagon is now thick, like a heavy blanket. You can no longer see the wood of the walls or the texture of the sacks. You have to use your hands to feel your way around. It is like being in a very small room where someone has turned out all the lamps. Every time you move, you have to be very careful. One wrong step could send you tumbling onto a sharp tool or a heavy barrel. You move on your hands and knees, feeling the rough floorboards beneath you. The floor is not smooth. It is made of planks that have been worn down by months of use. You can feel the small pits in the wood where stones from your boots have pressed in. You can also feel the thin layers of dust that never seem to go away. As you crawl deeper into the wagon, you encounter a large, round shape. It is a barrel. In the 1800s, these wagons were packed very carefully. A single wagon could carry about 2,500 pounds of supplies. That is the same weight as a small modern car, all piled into this one wooden box. These barrels are full of things like salted meat, flour, and hard crackers. They're the only reason you can survive such a long trip. You move your hand along the side of the barrel. It is held together by bands of cold iron. You follow the curve until your fingers find a small, heavy object hanging from a hook on the side of the crate. This is a spider. It is not a bug, but a special kind of cooking tool. A spider is a heavy cast iron frying pan that has 3 long metal legs. These legs let the pan stand directly over the hot coals of a campfire. You touch the cold metal of the legs. They feel like thin icicles. It is strange to think that just this morning, this pan was hot and full of sizzling bacon. Now it is just another cold piece of iron in a dark, freezing room. The space is very tight. You feel like a mouse hiding in a cupboard. You have to squeeze your body between a stack of wooden crates and the curved side of the wagon. Your shoulder brushes against the canvas. The fabric is vibrating. The wind outside is so strong now that it makes the canvas buzz against your skin. It is a fast humming feeling that makes your teeth chatter. You pull away and find a small opening between 2 soft bags of grain. You stop moving for a moment and just listen. This is the silence of the wagon. It is not a true silence because the wind is still screaming outside, but inside the air is heavy and still. You hear the slow, rhythmic sound of your own breathing. Each breath sounds loud in the small space. You wait. You let your ears get used to the sounds. You hear a tiny scritch, scritch sound near the front of the wagon. It might be a small field mouse that found a way inside to hide from the cold, just like you. You do not mind the company. In a storm like this, everything is just trying to find a warm corner. You reach out and touch a bag next to you. It feels different from the others. It is a sack of dried beans. When you press on it, the beans shift and make a soft clicking noise. It sounds like tiny stones rubbing together. You find a spot where the bags form a sort of low wall. This will be your nest for the night. You begin to clear a small space, pushing aside a heavy wooden box that feels like it might be full of horseshoes or nails. It is very heavy, and it takes all your strength to move it just a few inches. As you move the box, you feel a sharp bit of cold metal. You realize it is a spare linchpin. A linchpin is a very important little piece of iron that holds the wheel onto the axle. If you lose a linchpin, your wheel falls off, and your journey stops. People used to say the linchpin of the operation because it was the most important part of the whole machine. You tuck it back into its safe spot. In this dark room, every little piece of metal and wood has a job to do. The air is getting colder now. You can feel it creeping in through the floorboards. You find your heavy wool coat and pull it tighter around your shoulders. The wool is thick and scratchy, but it is the best thing for keeping you warm. You lean your head back against a sack of flour. It is hard, but it stays still. You close your eyes, even though it is already dark. It feels safer to have them closed. You think about how much is packed into this small space. There are seeds for planting next spring. There are extra clothes and heavy boots. There are books and small treasures from a home you left far behind. Everything you need to start a new life is right here, within arm's reach. You are surrounded by your whole world. It makes the wagon feel less like a box and more like a treasure chest. You take a moment to reflect on the stillness. You are not moving forward anymore. For months, you have been walking or riding, always moving toward the west. But tonight, the world has told you to stop. There is a strange kind of peace in being forced to stay still. You cannot change the weather. You cannot make the oxen move through the deep snow. You just have to be. You have to wait. The wind gives the wagon a particularly hard shove. You feel the floor tilt just a tiny bit more as the wheels sink into the soft, snowy mud. The wood creaks and pops like a small fire. You wonder if the canvas will hold. You wonder if the ropes will snap. But then you remember the smell of the pine tar and the strength of the oak. This wagon was built by people who knew about storms. It was built to last. You reach into a small leather pouch near your waist. You are looking for a lucifer. That is what people called the first matches. They were long sticks of wood with a chemical on the end that smelled like rotten eggs when you lit them. You find one and hold it in your fingers. You do not light it. You want to save it for when you really need it. Just holding the small stick of wood makes you feel a bit better. It is a tiny piece of fire, even if it is not burning yet. You settle deeper into your spot between the grain bags. The smell of the dry flour is very strong here. It is a dusty, comforting smell. It reminds you of bread and warm kitchens. You pull a loose corner of a heavy blanket over your legs. The blanket is made of thick, dark wool. It is heavy on your lap, and you can feel it starting to trap the heat from your skin. You are no longer moving through the dark. You have found your place. The boxes and barrels are like a wall of protection around you. They are cold and they are hard, but they are between you and the wind. You let your hands rest on your knees. You listen to the thump of a loose rope hitting the outside of the wagon. It is a steady sound, like a clock ticking. It measures the time as the night grows older and the storm grows stronger. You are just a small person in a small wooden room, but for now, that is enough. You have your supplies, you have your shelter, and you have your breath. You wait for the storm to do its worst. The wind is no longer just a sound. It has become a physical thing. It hits the side of the wagon with a heavy thud, like a giant hand slapping a piece of wood. For a second, you feel the whole wagon lean to one side. You hold your breath and grip the edge of a wooden crate. You wonder if the wind is strong enough to tip the whole thing over. The wagon is heavy, but the wind on these flat lands has nothing to stop it. It gains speed for hundreds of miles before it hits your small wooden home. It is a terrifying power, and you're right in the middle of it. You hear the canvas above you begin to scream. It is not a human scream, but a high, sharp sound of fabric being pulled too tight. This cloth is called Osnaburg. It is a very heavy type of cotton or linen that pioneers used for their wagon tops. It is tough and thick, but the wind is trying its best to rip it away from the wooden hoops. You hear a crack-snap sound as the wind catches a fold in the cloth. It sounds like a whip cracking in the air. You look up, and even in the dark, you can see the shapes of the hoops bending just a little bit. Here is something interesting to think about. To make these wagons ready for the trail, the people who built them would paint the canvas with linseed oil. Linseed oil is a yellow oil made from the seeds of a plant. When it dries, it makes the cloth hard and keeps the water out. It also helps to block the wind. But even with the oil, the cloth is still just cloth. It is flexible, it moves, and tonight it is moving more than you would like. You can feel the air being pushed through the tiny holes in the fabric. It is a fine, cold mist that settles on your face. Underneath the wagon, you hear a new sound. It is a clink, clink, clink of metal hitting metal. These are the stay chains. Stay chains are heavy iron chains that connect the different parts of the wagon's bottom frame. They are there to keep the wagon from falling apart when it goes over big rocks or through deep holes. Now the wind is moving the wagon so much that the chains are swinging. They sound like a ghostly bell ringing in the storm. It reminds you that the wagon is not just a box. It is a complex machine made of hundreds of parts, all working together to stay in one piece. The wind changes direction for a moment. Instead of pushing from the side, it comes straight at the front of the wagon. You hear it rush through the small opening where the driver usually sits. It brings a swirl of snow with it. The snow is so fine and dry that it looks like white dust. It dances in the air for a second before settling on the floorboards. You watch it by the very dim light coming through the canvas. You reach out and touch the snow. It does not feel wet. It feels like cold sand. It is so cold that it does not even melt when it touches the wood. You sit very still and let the silence of the wagon return as the gust of wind passes. For a few heartbeats, there is no sound at all. It is a heavy, thick silence that feels like it is pressing against your ears. In this moment, you realize how far you are from everything. There are no people here except the ones hiding in the other wagons nearby. There are no stone walls or brick chimneys to keep the world away. You are just a person sitting on a bag of beans in a wooden box, surrounded by a storm that could blow for days. You feel a deep sense of respect for the land. It is not mean and is not kind. It is just very, very big, and it does not care that you are there. Then the wind returns. This time it is louder. It sounds like a giant waterfall, a roar that fills up the whole world. The boom of the canvas is so loud it makes your head ache. You feel the dust rising from the cracks in the floorboards. The wind is finding its way through the gaps between the planks. It blows the dust into your hair and your eyes. You pull your collar up over your nose to help you breathe. The dust tastes like the trail, dry and earthy. You think about the jockey box at the front of the wagon. This is a small wooden chest where the driver keeps things like extra rope, a hammer, and maybe a bit of tobacco. You can hear the lid of the jockey box thump, thump, thumping as the wind tries to pry it open. You hope it stays shut. If the tools fall out into the snow, you will never find them again. In a place like this, losing a hammer is a very big problem. You cannot just go to a shop and buy another one. Everything you have is all you will ever have. You feel the cold sinking deeper into your bones now. The wind is taking away the tiny bit of warmth you had. Every time the wagon shakes, you feel a little bit more of the outside air coming in. It is like the storm is a person trying to find a way to get to you. It pokes at the corners of the canvas. It pushes against the wooden door. It whistles through the keyhole of a chest. You wrap your arms tighter around yourself. You are trying to be as solid as a rock. The wind makes a strange sound as it passes over the tops of the other wagons. It sounds like a low, deep moan. You realize that you are part of a long line of people, all doing the same thing. In every wagon along this trail, someone is sitting in the dark, listening to the same roar. You are all sharing this night, even if you cannot see each other. You feel a tiny bit of comfort in that. You are not the only one who is cold. You are not the only one who is waiting for the morning. The thump of the wind becomes a steady rhythm. It is like a giant drum beat. Boom, boom, boom. You start to count the beats. It gives you something to do. It helps you keep your mind away from the fear. You know that the wagon is strong. You know the linseed oil is doing its job. You know the oak wood will not snap easily. You just have to endure the noise. You have to let the wind do its work while you do yours. And your work is simply to stay where you are. You close your eyes and try to imagine the wind as a big blue river. It is flowing over the wagon, not hitting it. If you think of it as water, it feels less scary. It is just a force of nature, moving from one place to another. You are just a small stone at the bottom of the river. The water moves around you, and you stay still. The wagon gives one more big groan and settles into a new position. One of the wheels has sunk a little deeper into the mud and snow. Now the wagon feels even more solid. It's like it has decided to plant its feet and stay put. You lean your head back against the sack of grain. The noise is still there, and the cold is still there, but you are still here too. The first big blast of the storm has passed, and you're still safe. You take a slow, deep breath and prepare for the long hours of the night that are still to come. The watch continues. You are not alone in this small wooden room. As your eyes adjust to the deep shadows, you can see the dark shapes of others sitting near you. In the 1800s, it was very common for many people to share one wagon. Usually, a family of 4 or 5 people would live and sleep in this tiny space together. Sometimes, if the weather was very bad, even more people would squeeze inside to stay safe. Tonight, you are sharing your space with 3 others. You cannot see their faces clearly, but you can feel their presence. You can hear the soft rustle of their clothes and the slow huff of their breath in the cold air. You shift your weight on the hard floor, trying to find a way to be comfortable. Your shoulder touches the person next to you. It is a strange feeling to be so close to another human being in the dark. You do not talk. There is no need for words right now. The storm is doing all the talking for you. You simply lean against each other, sharing the heat of your bodies. This is a very old way to stay alive. In the winter, heat is like gold. It is the most precious thing you have, and you must not let any of it escape. Between you and the person next to you, there is a large, heavy rug. This is a buffalo robe. A buffalo robe is a thick skin taken from a bison, with the warm, curly fur still attached. It is very heavy and smells like dry grass and old leather. It is the warmest thing in the wagon. You pull one corner of the robe over your legs. The fur is thick and a bit scratchy, but as soon as it touches your skin, you feel a tiny bit of relief. The heat from your legs is trapped under the heavy skin, creating a small pocket of warmth that the wind cannot reach. You feel the person on your other side move a little bit. They are tucking their hands into their sleeves. Everyone is trying to become as small as possible. When you are small, there is less of you for the cold to touch. You all sit in a row like birds on a branch, huddled together against the frost. You can feel the steady thump, thump of a heart beating through the heavy cloth of a coat. It is a very quiet human sound. It reminds you that you are part of a group. You are not facing this long night alone. The wagon sways again as a gust of wind hits the canvas. You feel the person next to you stiffen for a second, then relax. You realize that everyone is doing the same thing, listening to the wood, listening to the wind, and waiting. In the silence between the loud roars of the storm, you can hear the very small sounds of the people around you. You hear someone swallow. You hear the tiny click of a button hitting a wooden box. These sounds are very small, but in the dark, they feel very big. They're the sounds of life continuing, even when the world outside is frozen and white. You think about how people lived back in the towns you left behind. In a house, you have different rooms. You have a bed with a soft mattress. You have a door that you can lock. But out here, on the trail, your whole life is shared. You eat together. You walk together. And tonight, you sleep pressed together for warmth. It is a very simple way of living. It takes away all the fancy things and leaves only what is important. Right now, the most important thing in the world is the person sitting next to you, because their body is keeping yours from turning to ice. You reach out and adjust the buffalo robe so it covers the feet of the person across from you. They give a tiny nod that you can barely see in the gloom. It is a small act of kindness. In a place like this, kindness is not about big speeches or gifts. It is about sharing a blanket or moving over so someone else has a place to sit. It is about staying quiet so someone else can try to rest. You feel a sense of peace come over you. Even though the storm is loud and the air is freezing, there is a feeling of safety in being together. You close your eyes and focus on the feeling of the fur against your hands. You think about the great animals that once wore this skin. They lived out on these plains in the snow and the wind for thousands of years. They knew how to survive the cold. Now their thick fur is helping you do the same. It is like a gift from the land. You run your fingers through the curly hair of the robe. It feels oily and strong. You tuck the edge of the skin under your boots to keep the drafts away. A draft is a small stream of cold air that blows through a gap. In this wagon, the drafts come up through the floor and in through the front flaps. You have to block them with whatever you can find. The air in the wagon is becoming a little bit warmer because of the 4 people huddling together. It is not warm like a room with a fireplace, but it is no longer as sharp as the air outside. The breath of 4 people fills the small space with a faint, damp mist. This mist settles on the wooden hoops above you. If it gets cold enough, that mist will turn into tiny crystals of frost. You can almost feel the air getting heavier as the night goes on. It smells of wool, breath, and the earthy scent of the buffalo robe. You sit in a moment of deep silence. The wind has dropped for a few seconds, and even the people around you have stopped moving. In this stillness, you feel the huge weight of the night. It feels like time has slowed down. You are not thinking about tomorrow or yesterday. You are only thinking about this breath, this heartbeat, and this tiny bit of warmth. It is a very deep, calm feeling. It is the feeling of being a small part of something much bigger. You lean your head back and let it rest against the wooden frame of the wagon. The wood is cold, but your body is starting to feel a bit more relaxed. The closeness of the others acts like a wall against the fear. When you are alone, the wind sounds like a monster. When you are with others, it just sounds like the wind. You listen to the rhythmic breathing of the group. It is like a slow, steady tide coming in and going out. In, out, in, out. You find yourself breathing at the same speed as the person next to you. Your lungs move together. Your hearts beat in the same dark room. You think about the term bedfellow. On the trail, your bedfellow is the person you share your blankets with to survive the night. Sometimes it is a brother or a sister, and sometimes it is a stranger you met only a week ago. But tonight, it does not matter. You are all the same. You are all travelers caught in a storm. You are all part of the night shift of the wilderness. You are the watchers who stay awake so the others can dream. The wagon gives a small creak as someone moves their legs. You feel a hand reach out and pat your arm in the dark. It is a quick touch, just to check that you are okay. You pat them back. It is a silent way of saying, I am still here. We are still safe. This small touch feels stronger than a stone wall. It is the connection between people that makes the hard life on the trail possible. Without each other, the cold would be too much to bear. You pull the buffalo robe up a little higher, right under your chin. You can feel the warmth from the person on your left and the person on your right. You are right in the middle, in the warmest spot of the wagon. You feel grateful for this small space. You feel grateful for the heavy wood and the thick fur. The world outside is a white wall of screaming wind, but in here, in the dark, there is a quiet, human heat. You settle your weight one last time, tucking your feet deep under the robe. The long night is still ahead of you, but for now, you are holding the cold at bay. You are warm enough. You are together. You are ready to wait. The air inside the wagon is changing. It is no longer dry and dusty like it was when you first climbed inside. Now, it feels heavy and thick. Every time you take a breath, you are adding a little bit of moisture to the small space. Your breath is warm and wet, but as soon as it leaves your mouth, it meets the freezing air of the storm. This creates a tiny cloud of mist that floats in front of your face. Slowly, this mist begins to settle on everything. It lands on the wooden crates, it lands on the canvas roof, and most of all, it lands on your clothes. You are wearing a heavy coat made of dark, thick wool. In the 1800s, wool was the most important thing a person could own in the winter. Here is a very interesting fact. Wool is a special kind of hair from a sheep, and it can hold a lot of water without making you feel cold. Even if a wool coat is soaking wet, it can still trap your body heat. This is because the tiny fibers of the wool have a natural curl that creates millions of small air pockets. These pockets keep the warmth close to your skin. People in those days knew that wool was the difference between life and death on a night like this. You reach up and touch the collar of your coat. It feels different now. It is no longer soft and fuzzy. It feels heavy and a little bit sticky. The moisture from your breath and the damp air from the storm have started to soak into the fabric. You can feel the weight of the water in the wool. It makes the coat press down harder on your shoulders. It is a strange feeling, like the coat is growing heavier as the night goes on. You move your head, and the damp wool rubs against your neck. It is a bit scratchy and cold at first, but then your skin warms the wet fabric up again. With the dampness comes a very strong smell. It is the smell of wet wool. If you have ever been near a farm or a wet dog, you know this scent. It is a deep, earthy smell that reminds you of the animals the wool came from. It smells like old grass, lanolin, which is the natural oil from a sheep's skin, and a little bit of wood smoke from the morning fire. To some people, this might be a bad smell, but to you, right now, it is the smell of safety. It means you are wearing the right clothes. It means you have the protection you need to survive the freezing wind. You are also wearing a hand-knitted comforter. That is what people back then called a very long, narrow scarf. Yours is made of grey wool and was knitted for you by someone who cared about you. You have it wrapped twice around your neck and tucked deep into the front of your coat. The comforter is even wetter than your coat because it is right in front of your mouth. You can feel the dampness on your chin. It feels like a cold, wet cloth, but it still keeps the wind from getting down your neck. You pull it up a little higher, covering your nose. Now, when you breathe in, the air is filtered through the wet wool. It smells strongly of the sheep and the damp, but it feels warmer in your lungs. You sit in silence for a moment, listening to the small sounds of the moisture. You can hear a tiny drip coming from the top of the wagon. The mist from everyone's breath has turned into water on the cold canvas. It gathers in the low spots between the wooden hoops and then falls onto the floor. One drop hits a tin cup near your feet with a sharp tink sound. Another drop hits the buffalo robe with a soft thud. In the dark, these sounds seem very loud. They remind you that even though you are inside, the water and the cold are still trying to find a way in. The moisture makes the air feel very close. It is hard to describe, but it feels like the room is getting smaller. The dampness seems to wrap around you like a second skin. You look at the person sitting next to you. In the dim light, you can see that their coat is also turning a darker color as it gets wet. You can see the tiny droplets of water shining on the fuzzy surface of their sleeve. No one complains. This is just how life is on the trail. You accept the dampness the same way you accept the hard floor and the loud wind. You find yourself thinking about the sheep that gave you this wool. You imagine them standing out in a field in the rain, their thick coats keeping them perfectly dry and warm on the inside. You feel a sense of thankfulness for that animal. You are using its strength to help you through the night. You run your hand down your sleeve, feeling the rough texture. Even though it is wet, you can still feel the heat of your arm underneath the fabric. The wool is doing its job. It is fighting the storm for you. The smell of the damp wool starts to mix with other smells in the wagon. There is the scent of the dried apples in the crate nearby. When they get a little bit of moisture from the air, they start to smell sweet and fruity again. It is a very small, nice smell in the middle of all the heavy, earthy scents. You close your eyes and focus on that sweetness. It reminds you of summer days and sun-warmed orchards. It helps you forget, just for a second, that you are sitting in a freezing wagon in the middle of a blizzard. The wind gives the wagon another hard push. You feel the damp canvas ripple above you. A few more drops of water fall from the hoops. You pull your knees closer to your chest. You are trying to keep the dry parts of your clothes away from the wet floor. The boards of the floor are now dark with moisture. The dust has turned into a thin, cold mud in the cracks. You have to be very careful where you put your hands. You think about how you will dry these clothes tomorrow. In your mind, you see a big fire and a long rope tied between two trees. You see your heavy coat hanging in the sun, the steam rising from the wool as it dries out. It is a happy thought. It gives you something to look forward to. But for now, you have to stay in the damp. You have to live with the heavy smell and the scratchy feel of the wet fabric. You take a long, slow breath. The air is thick and tastes of wool. You let the breath out slowly, watching the white mist join the rest of the dampness in the air. You feel a deep, quiet calm. The dampness is just another part of the night shift. It is not something to be afraid of. It is just proof that you are breathing, that you are warm, and that you are alive. You listen to the rain-like sound of the snow hitting the roof and the steady drip, drip of the water inside. You are part of the wagon now, as damp and as solid as the wood and the cloth. You lean back and let the heavy scent of the wool lull you into a deep state of waiting. The night goes on, and you go with it. You are sitting very still, but your ears are wide awake. Even though the wind is making a lot of noise, you begin to hear something else. It is a sound that comes from just on the other side of the wooden wall. It is a slow, heavy huff, 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 huff. It is the sound of a very large animal breathing. These are your oxen. They are tied to the side of the wagon to keep them from wandering off in the white storm. In the dark, the sound of their breath is deep and steady. It is a rhythmic sound that reminds you that you are not the only living things trying to stay warm tonight. In the 1800s, most people moving west chose oxen to pull their wagons instead of horses or mules. An ox is a very strong, slow-moving type of cattle. They were the favorite choice for the long trip because they were much stronger than horses, and they did not need expensive grain to eat. They could live on the dry grass they found along the way. They were also very calm animals. While a horse might get scared and run away during a loud storm, the oxen usually just put their heads down and wait. They are the true power behind your journey. Without them, your wagon would just be a heavy box stuck in the dirt. You lean your head against the wood of the wagon wall. You can feel a slight vibration. One of the oxen has leaned its heavy shoulder against the outside of the wagon. It is a massive animal, weighing more than 1,500 pounds. When it moves, the whole wagon feels its weight. You can almost feel the heat from its body coming through the thick oak planks. It is a strange and comforting thought. On the outside of the planks, there is a giant, warm animal. On the inside, there is you. You are separated by only 2 inches of wood, sharing the same space in the middle of a blizzard. The smell of the animal starts to drift through the small gaps in the floor. It is a very natural, earthy smell. It smells like wet fur, old hay, and the sweet scent of clover. It is a heavy smell, but it is not a bad one. To a pioneer, the smell of your livestock is the smell of wealth and safety. If the animals are healthy and breathing, it means you can keep moving when the sun comes up. You find yourself matching your own breathing to the slow huff of the ox outside. In, out, in, out, in. It is like a slow living clock ticking away the minutes of the night. You think about the equipment you used to hitch them up this morning. You remember the yoke. A yoke is a very heavy piece of wood, usually made of yellow birch or maple, that sits across the necks of 2 oxen. It is carved into a smooth shape so it does not hurt them, but it is incredibly strong. To hold the yoke in place, there are U-shaped pieces of wood called bows that go under the animal's neck and poke up through holes in the yoke. He had to slide a small wooden pin, called a bow key, into the top to keep everything together. Right now, those yokes and bows are sitting in the snow under the wagon, getting covered in white powder. You hope the wood does not crack in the deep frost. Every now and then you hear a clack sound. It is the sound of an ox's horn hitting the side of the wagon. Their horns are long and hard, and they use them to nudge each other as they huddle for warmth. You also hear the soft thud of their hooves in the snow. They are shifting their weight, trying to keep their feet from getting too cold. You know they are uncomfortable, but you also know they are built for this. Their skin is very thick, and they have a layer of fat that helps keep the cold out. They are the silent partners in your adventure, doing the hardest labor so that you can reach your new home. The wind drops for a moment, and a deep, heavy silence falls over the wagon. In this silence, the sound of the oxen becomes the only thing you can hear. You listen to the crunch of the snow as one of them moves its leg. You hear the swish of a tail hitting a wooden wheel. It is a very peaceful moment. You realize that the animals are not complaining. They are just existing. They are accepting the snow and the wind without any fear. It makes you feel a bit braver. If these big, gentle creatures can stand out there in the freezing dark, then you can certainly sit here in the shelter of the wagon. You imagine the oxen out there, their eyes closed and their long eyelashes covered in tiny crystals of frost. Their breath would be coming out in huge, white clouds that disappear into the storm. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for them. They have walked hundreds of miles, pulling your heavy load through mud and over rocks. They've never asked for anything but a bit of grass and a drink of water. Tonight they are your guardians. Their big bodies act like a windbreak, shielding the lower part of the wagon from the worst of the freezing air. You reach out and tap the wood of the wall very softly with your knuckles. It is a tiny thump, thump sound. You wonder if the ox on the other side can hear you. Perhaps it feels the vibration and knows that you are there, just as you know it is there. It is a quiet conversation between a person and an animal, held in the middle of a world that has gone completely white and cold. You feel a connection to the natural world that you never felt back in the city. Out here, you and the animals are on the same team. You are all part of the same living breath. You think about the goad stick you use to lead them during the day. It is a long, slender pole with a small metal point on the end. You use it to give them gentle taps to tell them which way to turn. You usually keep it tucked into a leather loop on the side of the wagon. You hope the wind hasn't blown it away. You think about how much you rely on such simple tools. A piece of wood, a bit of leather, and the strength of a beast. This is how the world was built. This is how the world was built. This is how the maps were made. The huff of the breath outside becomes a bit slower. The animals are settling down for the night. They are entering a state of rest, saving their energy for the hard work of digging out of the snow tomorrow. You find yourself feeling very sleepy as you listen to them. The rhythm is so steady and so calm. It is like the sound of the ocean hitting a sandy beach. It is a deep, low-frequency sound that vibrates in your chest. You take a moment to just reflect on the life of an ox. They are so much stronger than us, yet they are so patient. They do not hurry, and they do not worry. They just take one step and then another. It is a good lesson for the night. You do not need to worry about the morning. You do not need to worry about the miles ahead. You just need to take this one breath, and then the next. You need to be like the ox, strong, quiet, and steady. The wind begins to pick up again, but the sound of the breathing stays the same. The storm cannot change the heartbeat of the animals. It cannot change the warmth of their bodies. You lean your shoulder against the wall, matching the position of the ox outside. You feel the solidity of the wood between you. You feel safe. The night shift continues, and the big, gentle hearts of the oxen are beating right along with yours. You close your eyes and let the sound of the breathing fill your mind. A low and heavy song of survival in the deep winter dark. The light inside the wagon has changed again. It is no longer the deep velvet black of the early evening. Now there is a soft ghostly glow coming through the canvas roof. The snow outside has piled up so high and so thick that it is reflecting what little light is left in the sky. It is a cold, pale light that does not help you see things clearly, but it makes the world inside the wagon look strange and new. You look up at the tilt that is the word pioneers used for the heavy canvas cover, and you see that it's pressing down. The weight of the snow is making the cloth sag between the wooden hoops. You turn your eyes to the floor and the sides of the wagon. Even though the wood is thick, it is not perfect. As the wagon moved across the dry plains for many months, the sun and the dry air made the wood shrink. This created tiny gaps between the planks, no wider than a blade of grass. Usually you do not notice them, but tonight the storm has found them. You watch as a thin line of white powder begins to spray through a crack near the front of the wagon. It looks like a tiny fountain of salt. This is a historical fact about how wagons were built. The wood was usually seasoned, which means it was dried for a long time before being used so it wouldn't change shape. However, the weather on the trail was so much harsher than the weather back east that the wood often pulled apart anyway. Builders used different types of wood for different parts of the wagon. The floor was often made of pine because it was light, but the sideboards were made of poplar because it was tough and did not split easily. Even so, no wagon was ever truly airtight. You watch the snow as it gathers on the floorboards. It does not melt. It is too cold for that. Instead, it forms a small, sharp pile that looks like a miniature mountain. You reach out a finger and touch it. It feels dry and gritty, almost like sand. You realize that if the snow keeps coming through the gaps, it will eventually cover everything you own. You look around the dark space for something to stop the white powder. You find a small bag of scraps. In the 19th century, nothing was ever thrown away. Every bit of old clothing or torn fabric was kept in a bag to be used for repairs. You reach inside and pull out a strip of calico. Calico is a simple, cheap cotton cloth with a bright pattern printed on it. This piece has small red flowers on it, though you can barely see the color in the dim light. You also find some tow, which is a bunch of rough leftover fibers from flax plants. People use tow for many things, like starting fires or cleaning their tools. You take a handful of the tow and a strip of the calico. You lean forward and begin to push the fabric into the gaps between the boards. It is a slow, quiet job. You have to use your fingernails or a small piece of wood to poke the cloth deep into the cracks. This is a bit like caulking a boat to keep the water out. As you plug each gap, the whistling sound of the wind changes. It becomes a bit softer, a bit more distant. You feel a small sense of pride. You are fixing your home. You are making your world a little bit safer. Once the gaps are plugged, the deep atmospheric silence settles over the wagon. The wind is still there, of course, but the sound is muffled now. You sit back on your heels and watch the tiny mountain of snow you missed. It sits there, perfectly still. In this moment, you feel like time has stopped moving altogether. You are in a place between the world you left and the world you are trying to find. There is no noise of clocks, no sound of voices, and no light of the sun. There is only the white glow of the snow and the steady rhythm of your own heart. You let out a long breath and watch the mist of it drift toward the roof. The silence is so deep that you can hear the tiny tink-tink of the snow hitting the outside of the canvas. It sounds like thousands of tiny glass beads falling from the sky. You think about the world outside the wagon. By now, the trail must be completely hidden. The bushes, the rocks, and the path you follow today have all disappeared under a thick, white blanket. The world has been made flat and simple. There are no landmarks left to tell you where you are. You're just a tiny wooden island in a vast, white ocean. You reach out and smooth the buffalo robe over your knees. The fur feels warm, a big contrast to the cold snow on the floor. You think about how people in the future might look at this night. They might think it was a big adventure or a scary story. But to you, it is just a very long, very cold night shift. Your job is to stay awake just enough to make sure the snow doesn't pile too high on the roof and that the linchpins of your life stay in place. It is a quiet kind of bravery. It is the bravery of simply staying put. The snow on the roof is getting heavier. You can see the canvas stretching tighter and tighter. You know that if too much snow gathers on top, the weight might break the wooden hoops. You stand up slowly, your head brushing against the cold cloth. You use your hand to gently thump the underside of the roof. You hear a loud whoosh as a big pile of snow slides off the side of the wagon and hits the ground. The canvas jumps back into its proper shape. You do this all the way down the length of the wagon, clearing the weight. As you sit back down, you feel a bit of the white powder fall onto your neck. It is a sharp, cold sting that makes you shiver. You pull your comforter scarf tighter. You realize that you will have to do this many times before the morning comes. You are the guardian of this small space. You have to watch the gaps. You have to watch the roof. And you have to watch the light. You look at the person sleeping across from you. Their face is half hidden by a heavy woolen blanket. You feel a sense of responsibility for them. You are the one who is awake. You are the one who is listening to the storm. It is a heavy feeling, but it is also a good one. It gives you a reason to keep your eyes open. It gives you a reason to ignore the ache in your cold feet. The white glow from the snow is the only thing you have to look at. You find yourself staring at a single wooden hoop above your head. You follow the grain of the wood with your eyes, tracing the lines and the knots. You think about the tree this wood came from, and the forest where it once grew. It seems like a very long time ago. Everything before the storm feels like it belongs to another life. Here, in the night shift, the only thing that is real is the cold, the wood, and the white light. You settle back into your nest of grain bags. You have plugged the holes. You have cleared the roof. The snow is still falling, and the world is still hiding. But you are ready. You are the watchman of the winter, and you will not let the cold win. You close your eyes for a second, listening to the muffled roar of the wind, and you wait for the next bit of snow to find its way in. The night is long, but you are steady. The cold is no longer just a feeling on your skin. It has begun to sink deeper, moving through your heavy wool socks and into your very bones. You are sitting on the floor of the wagon, and the floor is where the coldest air lives. In the winter, the heat always rises to the top, while the freezing air stays low, hugging the wood near the wheels. Your feet are at the very bottom of this cold pool. You move your legs, and you realize with the start that you cannot feel your toes. They have gone numb, like little pieces of wood attached to the end of your feet. This is a dangerous thing. On the trail, your feet are your most important tools. You use them to walk 15 or 20 miles every single day. If your feet get damaged by the frost, you cannot walk, and if you cannot walk, you cannot finish the journey. You decide you must do something to get the blood moving again. You reach down and touch your boots. You are wearing what people call stoga boots. This is a micro-history detail that tells us a lot about life back then. Stoga boots were very heavy, rough shoes made of thick cow leather. They were named after a place called Conestoga, where the big wagons were first made. These boots were not made for comfort. They did not even have a left foot or a right foot. Both boots were shaped exactly the same, and you had to wear them until they stretched to fit your feet. The leather of your stoga boots is now as hard as a rock. The moisture from the day has frozen inside the hide, making the boots feel like they are made of iron. You try to wiggle your toes inside the stiff leather, but nothing happens. It feels like your feet are trapped in 2 blocks of ice. You know you have to be careful. You should not rub your feet too hard if they are frozen, as that can hurt the skin. Instead, you slowly reach for the laces. Your fingers are stiff and clumsy, like big wooden sticks, but you manage to loosen the heavy leather strings. To help keep the wagon warm, you have used a very old trick. Here is a historical fact about winter travel. Pioneers often covered the floor of their wagons with a thick layer of loose straw. They did this because straw is full of tiny pockets of air. Just like the wool in your coat, these air pockets trap the heat from your body and keep the cold from coming up through the floorboards. You reach down and grab a handful of the dry straw. It makes a sharp, crinkling sound in the quiet wagon. You begin to tuck extra straw around your boots, building a little nest for your feet. You sit back and wait. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving. You stop breathing loudly. You just listen. The wind has turned into a low hum, like a giant bee buzzing far away. The cold feels heavy now, almost like it has a physical weight. It is pressing in on the wagon from every side. In this deep silence, you feel the vastness of the winter wilderness. You are a tiny point of life in a world that has gone to sleep under the ice. You think about how strange it is that a few inches of straw and a bit of leather are all that protect you from the biting frost. You feel very small, but you also feel a quiet strength. You are still here. You are still breathing. Slowly, you feel a tiny tingle in your big toe. It feels like a small needle poking your skin. Then, another tingle follows, and another. This is a good sign. It means the blood is finding its way back. It is a bit painful, a sharp, stinging feeling that makes you want to hiss through your teeth, but you welcome it. Pain means life. It means your body is fighting back against the freeze. You continue to move your feet very slowly inside the boots, making small circles with your ankles. Crunch, crunch goes the straw under your heels. You think about the people who made these boots. They were made to last for 1,000 miles of walking over rocks and through mud. They were built to be tough, just like the people who wear them. You run your hand over the rough leather. It is greasy to the touch because you rubbed it with dubbin last week. Dubbin is a mix of oil and tallow, which is animal fat that helps keep the leather soft and stops the water from getting in. Without that grease, the boots would have cracked and fallen apart weeks ago. Every little bit of care you took in the sunshine is helping you now in the dark. The dampness of the air makes the straw smell like a barn. It is a dusty, sun-dried smell that reminds you of summer harvests and warm afternoons in the fields. You close your eyes and try to imagine that heat. You imagine the sun beating down on your back while you toss hay with a pitchfork. You can almost feel the sweat on your forehead. Thinking about the heat helps your body stay calm. It stops you from shivering too hard. Shivering is your body's way of trying to get warm, but it also uses up a lot of your energy. On a night like this, you need to save every bit of energy you have. You pull a heavy woolen blanket down from a crate and wrap it tightly around your legs over the top of the straw. Now your feet are inside the boots, inside the straw, and under the blanket. You have built a wall of layers. Each layer is a small victory over the storm. You feel the stinging in your toes turn into a dull ache, and then finally into a soft warmth. You have saved your feet for another day. You have won this small battle of the night shift. You lean your head back against the sack of flour. The wagon sways gently as the wind pushes against the side. It feels like a cradle rocking in the dark. You are starting to feel a bit more comfortable, though the cold is still waiting just outside your blankets. You listen to the huff of the oxen outside and the drip of the water from the roof. You are learning the language of the wagon in the winter. You know which sounds are safe and which ones mean trouble. The sound of the straw shifting under your feet is a safe sound. It is the sound of protection. You take a slow, deep breath. The air is cold in your throat, but your feet are finally starting to feel like they belong to you again. You realize how much you have learned since you started this journey. Back in the city, you never thought about your toes or the smell of wet wool. You never thought about the power of a handful of straw. But out here, these simple things are everything. They are the difference between a good morning and a very bad one. You sit in the dark, feeling the warmth slowly grow. You are not just a passenger in this wagon. You are its keeper. You have to watch over your own body just as you watch over the supplies and the animals. You are part of a long line of people who have sat in the dark, wiggling their toes and waiting for the sun. You feel a connection to them, a quiet bond of shared hardship. The storm is loud and the night is very long, but you have your straw, your stoga boots and your woolen blankets. You are tucked in and you are ready to face the next hour of the watch. The biting cold has been pushed back for now, and you remain steady in the heart of the white winter. The cold has a way of making you feel very empty. It is not just the space around you, but the feeling inside your stomach. Your body is working hard, burning through its fuel just to keep your heart beating and your blood moving. You realize you haven't eaten since the sun went down. In the dark, you reach out with one hand, feeling the side of a wooden crate until you find a small cloth bag. Inside this bag is something every traveler knows well: hardtack. Hardtack is a very simple kind of biscuit. It is made of just flour and water, baked many times until it is as hard as a brick. It is a historical fact that hardtack could last for years without going bad, which is why it was the main food for sailors and pioneers. Some people called it tooth dullers or sheet iron because it was so difficult to chew. In fact, if you tried to bite it right now, you might actually break a tooth. Usually, you would soak it in coffee or fry it in pork fat to make it soft, but tonight there is no fire. There is only the cold and the dark. You take a piece of the hardtack out of the bag. It feels heavy and cold in your hand, like a flat stone you might find in a river. You don't try to bite it. Instead, you put a small corner of it into your mouth and just let it sit there. You have to be patient. You use the warmth of your mouth to slowly soften the dry flour. This is a very slow way to eat, but it gives you something to focus on. As the biscuit softens, you begin to taste the simple wheaty flavor. It is not a feast, but it is the most delicious thing in the world right now, because it means your body is getting the energy it needs. This is a moment of micro-history. Pioneers often carried a small grub box at the end of the wagon for quick meals. Inside, besides the hardtack, they might have a small tin of saleratus. Saleratus was an early kind of baking soda. They used it to make their bread rise when they had the chance to bake over a fire. You don't have bread tonight, but just thinking about the thump of a fresh loaf being sliced makes your mouth water. You move the hardtack to the other side of your mouth and wait for it to crumble. The wagon is very quiet as you eat. You can hear the crunch of the dry biscuit in your own ears, sounding like a tree branch snapping in the woods. This is an atmospheric silence. There are no voices to distract you, no music, and no birds singing. There is only the sound of the wind outside and the sound of you surviving inside. You feel a deep sense of respect for this simple food. It is not fancy and it is not pretty, but it is strong. It is built to last, just like the wagon and just like you. You think about the farmers who grew the wheat for this flour. They worked under the hot sun, cutting the stalks and threshing the grain. All that sunshine from months ago is now locked inside this dry biscuit, waiting to be turned into heat for your body. It is like you are eating a little bit of stored summer to fight off the winter. You swallow a small piece of the softened dough. You can feel it moving down, a tiny spark of fuel for your internal fire. The wind gives the wagon a sharp shake, but you don't mind as much now. Your stomach feels a little less hollow. You reach into the bag and find a small shriveled object. It is a piece of dried apple. Pioneers dried fruit so they wouldn't get sick from a lack of vitamins, a condition called scurvy. The apple is leathery and tough, but it has a concentrated sweetness that makes your tongue tingle. You chew it slowly. enjoying the way the flavor fills your senses. It is a small treat, a reminder that the world can be sweet even when it is freezing. You sit in the dark, lean your head back, and let the last bit of the hardtack dissolve. You feel a bit stronger now. The night shift is easier to handle when you are not quite so hungry. You tuck the cloth bag back into its place, making sure the string is tied tight so no mice can get in. You fold your hands over your stomach and feel the warmth spreading through you. You have done your work for this hour. You have fed the fire inside. You are ready to keep watch for a little while longer. The wind has grown even stronger now, and the wagon has started to behave like a living thing. Because it is sitting on high wooden wheels and has a tall curved roof, it catches the wind like a sail on a ship. You feel a sudden heavy push from the side, and the whole wagon sways to the left. It is a slow, sickening movement that makes your stomach do a little flip. You reach out and grab a wooden rib of the roof to steady yourself. You are no longer on solid ground. You are at sea, in the middle of a grassy ocean, and the storm is tossing you about. This swaying is part of the design of the wagon. Here is a historical fact about how these vehicles were made. The body of the wagon, called the box, was not bolted tightly to the wheels. Instead, it sat on top of heavy wooden bars called bolsters. This allowed the wagon to twist and move a little bit as it went over bumpy ground or through deep holes. If it were too stiff, the wood would simply snap under the pressure. Tonight, that flexibility is keeping you safe, but it makes the night feel very restless. Every time a big gust hits, the wagon creaks and groans, the wood rubbing together with a sound like a heavy door opening on old hinges. You sit on the floor and spread your legs wide to keep your balance. You feel the floor tilt beneath you, then slowly swing back as the wind lets go. It reminds you of being a child in a rocking cradle, but this cradle is cold and surrounded by a roaring dark. You try to keep your body loose. If you stay too stiff, the swaying will tire you out. You have to move with the wagon, leaning your weight this way and that as the wind dictates. You are learning the rhythm of the storm, a slow and unsteady dance between the wood and the air. This is a moment of microhistory to stop the wagon from tipping over in high winds. Pioneers would sometimes tie heavy ropes from the top of the wagon to stakes driven deep into the ground. Or, if they were lucky, they would tie the ropes to the heavy wheels of the wagon next to them. You remember seeing the men doing this just as the sun went down. You can hear the thrum of those ropes now. They are pulled as tight as guitar strings. When the wind hits them, they make a low, vibrating sound that you can feel in your teeth. It is a deep hum that stays in the air even when the wind drops for a second. The swaying makes everything inside the wagon shift and rattle. You hear the clink of a metal spoon inside a wooden bowl. You hear the soft thump of a bag of flour hitting the side of a crate. These small noises tell you that the world is in motion. You realize that nothing is truly still tonight. The snow is moving, the air is moving, the animals are huddling, and your home is rocking. In this atmospheric silence between the big gusts, you feel the weight of the wagon settling back down into the mud and snow. It feels like the wagon is trying to dig its toes in, trying to find a grip on the earth so it doesn't get blown away into the white void. You close your eyes and let the movement take you. It is a strange feeling, being tossed around while sitting in total darkness. You have to trust the wood. You have to trust the iron. You have to trust that the men who built this wagon in a shop far away knew what they were doing. They used seasoned oak for the frame because it is strong and won't break under a load. They used iron tires on the wheels to keep the wood from splitting. Every nail and every bolt was put there to survive a night, exactly like this one. You run your hand over the smooth, cold surface of an iron bolt head. It feels solid. It feels like a promise. The wind roars again, and the wagon gives a particularly violent lurch. You hear a splash of water from a bucket near the front. The smell of the water is fresh and cold. You realize that the storm is testing every part of the wagon. It is looking for a weak spot, a loose board, or a thin piece of canvas. But the wagon holds. It sways, it leans, and it cries out with the sound of rubbing wood. But it does not break. You feel a sense of pride in this machine. It is your shield, and it is doing its job well. You think about the term wobble. On the trail, a wobble in a wheel was a sign of big trouble. It meant the axle was wearing out or the grease was gone. But tonight, the wobble is in the whole world. You feel the floor move under your seat, a slow side-to-side motion that never quite stops. You find yourself leaning into the person next to you, and then away as the wagon sways. It is a quiet, shared experience. You don't need to speak to know that everyone else is feeling the same seasickness. You are all riders on the same wooden ship, waiting for the storm to blow itself out. As the hour passes, you become used to the movement. It becomes a part of the background, like the sound of the wind or the smell of the wet wall. You learn to predict when a big sway is coming by the sound of the wind as it hits the front of the wagon train. You hear a distant boom as the wind strikes the first wagon, and a few seconds later, your own home begins to tilt. You brace your shoulder against the side, feeling the power of the air pressing against the wood. It is a reminder of how powerful nature is, and how small your wooden box really is. You take a deep breath of the damp, cold air. The swaying is a sign that you are still above ground. It means the wind hasn't buried you yet. You are like a cork floating on a white sea. You are moving, but you are not sinking. You settle back down into your nest of blankets and straw, letting your body go limp as the wagon rocks you once more. The long night shift continues, and the wooden ship sails on through the dark, through the snow, and through the endless roaring wind. You are safe in the middle of the motion. The cold has reached a point where it is no longer just an outside force. It has moved inside your very body. As the night grows deeper, the air becomes so freezing that every time you exhale, you create a thick white cloud in the dim, ghostly light reflecting off the snow. These clouds of breath look like little ghosts dancing in front of your face. They are bright and thick, hanging in the still air for a few seconds before they slowly fade away into the shadows of the wagon. Each one is a puff of your own life, a little bit of your internal heat escaping into the dark. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You sit perfectly still and watch your breath. In the quiet between the wind's roars, you can hear the tiny hiss of the air leaving your lungs. It is a very peaceful thing to watch. You breathe in, and the air feels like sharp needles inside your nose. You breathe out, and there is the white mist again. It is a reminder that you are a warm, living thing in a world that has turned to ice. You find yourself counting the clouds. 1, 2, 3. It gives you a strange sense of comfort to see proof that you are still here, still warm, and still breathing. Here is a historical fact about how pioneers dealt with this damp air. This mist from your breath is not just air, it is full of tiny drops of water. When several people are trapped in a small space like this, all that breath adds up. The moisture rises and hits the cold canvas roof, where it turns into frost. This frost looks like beautiful sparkling white feathers or tiny ferns growing on the cloth. Pioneers called this interior frost. It was pretty to look at, but dangerous. If the wagon warmed up even a little bit, all that frost would melt and rain down on your blankets, making everything wet and even colder. To keep the air from getting too damp, you decide to check the ventilation. This is a fancy word for letting a little bit of fresh air in. Even though it sounds crazy to let more cold air into the wagon, you have to do it so you don't choke on the thick, heavy air. You reach for the front flap of the canvas. You are looking for the drawstring. This is a microhistory detail. The ends of the wagon were closed with a heavy cord that ran through metal loops. By pulling the cord, you could bunch the fabric together like the top of a laundry bag. You loosen the cord just an inch or two. A tiny stream of fresh, freezing air whistles inside. It smells like nothing. It is so cold that it has no scent at all. It is clean air, coming straight from the heart of the storm. You watch as your clouds of breath are suddenly caught by this new draft. They swirl around in the dark like tiny white ribbons before being pulled out through the gap. The air in the wagon feels a bit lighter now. It is easier to take a deep breath. You pull your collar up higher and settle back into your spot. You think about the people you are with. You can see their breath too. In the dark, it looks like there are 4 little steam engines working away in the wagon. Each person has their own rhythm. The person to your right has a fast, shallow breath. The person to your left breathes slow and deep. It is like a quiet song made of mist. You feel a deep connection to them in this moment. You are all sharing the same air. You are all creating the same white clouds. You are all part of the same night shift, keeping each other company simply by existing. The clouds of breath start to settle on the things around you. You touch the sleeve of your wool coat and find that it feels a bit damp and fuzzy. The mist is turned into tiny, microscopic beads of water on the wool. You brush them off with your hand. You have to be careful not to let the moisture soak in too deep. You remember an old saying from the trail: keep your powder dry in your blankets dryer. Without dry blankets, the long hours of the morning will be much harder to face. You pull a spare piece of dry canvas over your lap to protect your woolen layers from the falling mist. The wagon gives a slow, tired creak. The wind is still there, but it feels more like a background hum now. The real story of this hour is the breath. You watch as a particularly large cloud of mist floats toward a wooden hoop above your head. It touches the cold wood and disappears. You know it hasn't really gone. It has just turned into a thin layer of ice on the oak. Everything in this wagon is slowly being coated in a very thin skin of frost. The crates, the barrels, even the iron bolts are turning white. It is as if the storm is slowly painting the inside of your home to match the outside. You close your eyes for a moment, but you can still feel the mist. It feels cool against your eyelashes. You take a very slow, deep breath, filling your lungs all the way to the bottom. You hold it for a second, feeling the heat of your body warming the air. Then, you let it out in one long, steady stream. You open your eyes just in time to see a great swirling ghost of white mist fill the space in front of you. It is a beautiful, quiet moment. You feel like a dragon in a cave, breathing out clouds of smoke. You realize that this is what survival looks like. It isn't always about fighting or running. Sometimes it is just about sitting in the dark and breathing. It is about watching the mist and waiting for the light. You feel a sense of peace. The cold is strong, but your breath is steady. The storm is big, but your little clouds of mist are proof that you are still winning. You tuck your hands deep into your armpits to keep them warm and settle in for the next part of the watch. The clouds keep dancing and the night keeps moving, one breath at a time. As the night stretches on, you learn a very important lesson about surviving in the cold. It is the rule of absolute stillness. When you were moving around earlier, plugging the gaps and checking the roof, you felt a little bit of warmth from the work. But now, that energy is gone. You realize that every time you move a finger, or shift your legs, or even turn your head, you are breaking the tiny layer of warm air that your body's worked so hard to build up inside your clothes. It is like a little bubble of heat, and if you move too much, that bubble pops and the freezing air rushes in to take its place. In the 1800s, people did not have the fancy heaters we have today. They had to rely on conservation. This is a big word that just means saving what you already have. This is a historical fact. Pioneers were taught from a young age that in a winter storm, your best friend is your own quietness. By staying perfectly still, you are acting like a thermos. You are trapping your own heat and keeping it close to your skin. You see the others in the wagon doing the same. They look like statues carved from wood or stone. No one is fidgeting. No one is tapping their feet. The only thing moving is the mist from their breath. You find a position that you can hold for a long time. You are sitting with your back against a heavy sack of flour, which acts like a thick wall against the cold wood of the wagon. Your knees are pulled tight against your chest, and your arms are wrapped around your legs. You tuck your hands inside your opposite sleeves so your fingers are resting against the warm skin of your arms. You duck your chin down into the collar of your coat. Now you are a solid ball. There are no gaps for the heat to escape. You feel the warmth slowly growing in the small spaces between your skin and your woolen shirt. It is a very faint, gentle feeling, like the glow of a tiny candle. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You become so still that you start to hear things you didn't notice before. You can hear the thump-thump of your own heart. It sounds slow and steady, like a drum beating far away in the woods. You can hear the blood rushing in your ears, a sound like the wind in the trees. You feel like you are part of the wagon itself. You are not just a person inside a box. You are a piece of the cargo, as still and as quiet as the barrels of salt pork or the crates of tools. In this stillness, the fear starts to go away. You are not fighting the storm anymore. You are just waiting for it to finish. This is a micro-history detail. Many pioneers carried a small pocket companion or a housewife. This was a tiny sewing kit made of cloth or leather, filled with needles, thread, and maybe a spare button. You can feel the small, hard shape of yours in your coat pocket. Usually, it is a tool for work, but right now, it is just another thing to keep still. You don't reach for it. You don't even move your hand to touch it. You just let it rest there. Everything you own is staying still with you, huddled together in the dark. The stillness changes how you feel time. When you are moving, minutes go by quickly. But when you are this quiet, every second feels long and deep. You watch a single drop of water hang from the wooden hoop above you. It grows larger and larger, reflecting the dim light from the snow. It takes a long time before it finally falls. You count the seconds between the tink of the drops. You are living in the now. You aren't thinking about next week or even tomorrow morning. You are just thinking about this one moment of being still and staying warm. You think about the night shift workers back in the big cities, the men who light the street lamps, or the watchmen who walk the docks. They are moving around to stay warm, their boots clacking on the pavement. But your night shift is different. Your job is to be the anchor. Your job is to be the one thing in the world that does not move while the wind tries to blow everything away. It takes a lot of strength to stay this still. Your muscles want to stretch. Your back wants to straighten. But you tell your body to stay put. You are the master of your own heat. The air in the wagon is very heavy now. It feels like it is made of velvet. Because no one is moving, the air is not swirling around. It has settled into layers. The coldest air is on the floor, and a slightly warmer layer is around your shoulders. You are careful not to disturb these layers. You breathe very softly, making sure the warm mist from your mouth stays right in front of your face to keep your nose warm. You are a clever survivor. You are using every trick you know to keep the frost at bay. You look at the person across from you. Their eyes are closed, but you know they are not truly asleep. They are in that same state of vigilant stillness. They are listening to the wind, just like you. You feel a sense of respect for them. It is a shared task, this keeping of the heat. If one person started moving around and complaining, it would break the peace for everyone. But you are all working together by doing nothing at all. It is a quiet, powerful kind of teamwork. The wagon gives a long, low creak as the wind pushes it. You move with it, but you don't break your shape. You are like a piece of the wood. You feel the vibration of the storm, but you don't let it shake you. You are tucked deep into your nest of wool and straw. The cold is a giant, and it is walking all around the wagon, looking for a way in. But as long as you stay still, as long as you stay small and quiet, the giant cannot find you. You are hidden in the shadows, a tiny spark of life that refuses to go out. You take a very slow breath. You feel the air enter your lungs and turn warm. You let it out slowly, watching the white ghost of it drift away. You are the watchman of the stillness. You are the guardian of the bubble. The night is halfway over, and you are still here, holding your ground by staying exactly where you are. You close your eyes and let the silence wrap around you like a heavy blanket. The long wait continues, and you are the master of the wait. The sound of the storm has changed. It is no longer just a roaring wind or the boom of the canvas. Now there is a sharp, metallic sound hitting the roof. It is a fast tap-tap, like thousands of tiny hammers hitting a drum. You realize that the soft snow has turned into ice. This is what people called sleet. In the 19th century, a sleet storm was one of the most feared events on the trail. The tiny grains of ice are harder than snow, and they hit with more force. They are like small pieces of gravel being thrown by a giant. This is a historical fact about the winter trail. Sleet was dangerous because it created a glaze. It would cover the wagon, the oxen, and the grass in a thin, heavy layer of clear ice. This ice was very heavy, and it could make the canvas roof collapse or make the wooden wheels freeze to the ground. You listen to the sound of the ice tapping against the fabric above your head. It is a restless, busy sound. It makes the night feel even more crowded. You can almost hear the ice building up, layer by layer, turning your wagon into a frozen shell. You reach up and touch the canvas. It feels different now. Instead of being soft and flexible, it is becoming stiff. When you push on it, you hear a crackling sound, like breaking glass. The ice is freezing the threads of the cloth together. This makes the wagon much more airtight, which helps keep the wind out. But it also makes the wagon feel very small. It is like you are being sealed inside a cold white tomb. You have to be careful not to poke the roof too hard, or the ice might crack and let the freezing water drip inside. This is a moment of micro-history. Pioneers often carried a tool called a slicker. This was a long coat made of cloth that had been soaked in oil or wax to make it waterproof. If you had to go outside in this sleet, you would put on your slicker to keep the ice from soaking your wool clothes. You look at your slicker hanging on a peg near the front. It is covered in a thin layer of white frost. It looks like a ghost standing guard in the corner. You are glad you don't have to put it on right now. The thought of stepping out into that stinging ice makes you shiver. In the middle of the tap-tap-tap, a deep atmospheric silence falls inside the wagon. Because the ice is sealing the gaps, the sounds from outside are becoming muffled. The roar of the wind feels further away, like it is happening in another world. Inside, the silence is so heavy you can hear the tiny tink of a single ice cream hitting a metal bucket. You sit and listen to the rhythm of the ice. It is not a steady beat, it comes in waves. Sometimes it is a loud rattle, and then it fades to a soft hiss. It is the music of the winter, a cold and sharp song that never seems to end. You think about the oxen outside. They have no wagon to hide in, the sleet must be hitting their thick hides and freezing in their fur. You remember seeing oxen after a storm like this, their backs covered in a sheet of ice that looked like a glass saddle. They are tough, but the ice is a cruel enemy. It makes everything slippery and heavy. You hope they are huddling close enough to keep the ice from reaching their skin. You feel a pang of worry, but there is nothing you can do. To go out now would only put you in danger too. You have to trust in their strength. The tapping on the roof reminds you of a telegraph machine. Back in the cities, telegraphs were starting to send messages across wires using clicks and taps. You imagine the storm is trying to tell you something. Maybe it is saying, stay still, or wait for the sun. You find yourself trying to decode the patterns in the ice. Tap, tap, tap. It is a lonely way to spend the hour, but it keeps your mind busy. It keeps you from thinking about how cold your fingers are or how much your back aches from sitting on the hard floor. You notice that a small amount of ice is forming on the inside of the canvas now. The moisture from your breath is freezing as soon as it touches the cold cloth. You reach out and rub a tiny spot with your thumb. The ice is smooth and very, very cold. It feels like touching a window pane in the middle of January. You realize that you are surrounded by ice on the outside, ice on the inside, and ice on the ground. You are in a world made of frozen water. It is a beautiful thought in a way, but also a very scary one. You pull your comforter scarf up over your ears. The sound of the sleet is very loud when your head is near the roof. The thick wool of the scarf helps to dull the noise. It makes you feel like you are underwater, safe and tucked away. You close your eyes and let the tap, tap, tap become a lullaby. It is a strange sort of comfort, but in the night shift, you take comfort wherever you can find it. The sound means the roof is still there. It means the canvas is holding. It means you are still protected. The wagon gives a small shudder as a big chunk of ice slides off the roof and hits the ground with a thud. The weight is shifting. You realize the storm is changing the shape of everything. The trees, if there were any, would be bending under the weight. The grass is being buried under a hard crust. The world is being transformed into something sharp and brittle, but you remain soft and warm inside your wool. You are the heartbeat in the center of the ice. You take a slow, deep breath. The air is very still now. You watch the mist of your breath drift toward the ice-covered roof. It looks like smoke from a tiny chimney. You feel a sense of endurance. You have survived the snow, and now you are surviving the ice. You are like the oak wood of the wagon, strong, flexible, and steady. The tap, tap, tap continues, a constant reminder of the power of the winter wilderness. You settle back into your nest and wait. The ice is hard, but your will is harder. The watch goes on. In the deep, freezing quiet of the wagon, your mind begins to wander away from the ice and the wind. To keep your spirit strong, you find yourself thinking about a very different place. You are thinking about the kitchen of the home you left behind. In your mind, you can see the big stone fireplace. It is the heart of the house, where a fire is always burning. You can almost feel the heat on your face, not the sharp, stinging heat of a storm, but the deep orange warmth of glowing oak logs. It is a memory so clear that it feels like you could reach out and touch the soot on the stones. In the 1800s, the kitchen fire was not just for cooking. It was the only source of warmth for the whole family. This is a historical fact. Before people had metal stoves, they used a hearth. A hearth is the floor of a fireplace, usually made of big flat stones. People would keep the fire going all day and all night. If the fire went out, it was a big problem, as they would have to use a tinderbox to start it again, which took a long time. You remember the sound of the bellows, a tool made of wood and leather used to blow air into the coals, making the fire roar and turn a bright, happy yellow. You can almost smell the kitchen now. It smells of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, like sage and thyme. It smells of fresh bread and the salty scent of ham hanging in the chimney to be smoked. Most of all, it smells of comfort. In this atmospheric silence, the memory of those smells is so strong, it makes your heart ache just a little bit. You remember how the cat would sleep on the warm stones of the hearth, and how the light from the flames would dance on the copper pots hanging on the wall. It was a world of gold and brown, a world where the cold was something that stayed outside the window. This is a moment of micro-history. In many old kitchens, there was a special tool called a Dutch oven. This is a heavy cast iron pot with a flat lid that has a rim around the edge. To bake bread or a stew, you would put the pot right into the fire and then pile hot coals on top of the lid. This way, the heat came from the top and the bottom at the same time. You can see your mother lifting the heavy lid with a metal hook, the steam rising up in a big, sweet-smelling cloud. Thinking about that steam makes the cold mist of your breath in the wagon feel a little less lonely. You focus on the feeling of being toasty. Back then, you didn't even think about what it meant to be warm. It was just there, like the air. But now, you realize that warmth is a gift. You try to pull that memory of the kitchen fire into the present moment. You imagine the orange light filling the dark corners of the wagon. You imagine the wooden walls turning warm to the touch. It is a way to trick your brain, to help your body stop shivering. If you can see the fire in your mind, you can face the ice for another hour. The kitchen was also a place of night shifts, though they were much warmer than this one. You remember your father sitting by the fire late at night, carving a new handle for an axe or fixing a leather harness. The only sound was the snip-snip of his knife and the pop of the logs. It was a quiet time of work and peace. You realize that you are doing the same thing now. You are doing the quiet work of survival. You are the one staying awake so that the dream of a new home can come true. You think about the settle, a long wooden bench with a very high back that people sat on near the fire. The high back was there to block the cold drafts coming from the door and to keep the heat of the fire wrapped around your shoulders. You realize your wagon is like a giant settle. It is a wooden shell designed to hold you and keep the world away. You lean your back against the sack of flour and imagine it is the warm wood of that kitchen bench. You let your muscles relax just a little bit as you sink deeper into the memory. The tap, tap, tap of the ice on the roof starts to sound like the click of knitting needles. You remember the sound of wool being turned into socks and sweaters by the fireside. Everything you are wearing tonight was probably made in a room just like that. Every stitch was a moment of care, a way to protect you from the very storm you are in right now. You run your hand over your sleeve. You aren't just wearing wool, you are wearing the work and the love of the people who wanted you to be safe. You take a slow, deep breath. The air is still freezing, but your mind is warm. You have found a way to bridge the distance between the home you left and the home you are building. The memory of the kitchen fire is like a lantern you are carrying in the dark. It doesn't give off real heat, but it gives off hope, and in a blizzard, hope is just as important as a wool blanket. You settle back, closing your eyes to see the glowing coals one more time. The watch continues, and the fire in your mind keeps the darkness at bay. The night has reached its deepest point. Outside, the storm is still shouting, but inside the wagon, the light has disappeared completely. When you first climbed in, there was a grey glow from the snow, but now the clouds must be so thick that even the starlight cannot find a way through. This is a level of darkness that you rarely see in the modern world. It is a solid, black, like being at the bottom of a deep well. You hold your hand up just an inch from your nose, and you cannot see it. You are in a world where your eyes no longer work, and you must rely entirely on your other senses to understand your surroundings. In the 1800s, people were much more used to this kind of darkness. This is a historical fact. Before the invention of electric lights, the night was a very real thing that stopped almost all work. People used candles made of tallow, which is rendered animal fat, or small oil lamps. But these were expensive and used up precious oxygen. In a closed wagon during the storm, you cannot light a flame because the smoke would have nowhere to go and you might accidentally start a fire. So you must sit in the blind dark. You learn that the darkness is not empty. It is full of shapes that you can only feel with your mind and your skin. You reach out your hand very slowly to find the person sitting next to you. You do not want to startle them, so you move like a shadow. Your fingers brush against a rough woolen sleeve. You feel the steady up and down movement of their shoulder as they breathe. They are still there. In this atmospheric silence, the presence of another person is a powerful thing. You cannot see their face, you cannot see their eyes, but you know they are alive. This shared darkness creates a strange kind of bond. You are all equal in the blackness. No one is the leader, and no one is a follower. You are all just heartbeats in the dark. This is a moment of micro-history. Many travelers carried a small tinderbox in their pocket. A tinderbox was a small metal tin containing a piece of flint, a piece of steel, and some car cloth, which is cotton cloth that has been burnt in a special way so it catches sparks easily. You touch the cold metal of your own tinderbox. It is a small, heavy weight that gives you comfort. Even though you cannot use it now, Knowing that you have the power to create fire in your pocket makes the darkness feel less heavy. It is a tiny piece of the sun, waiting for the right moment to wake up. You find that when you cannot see, your ears become much sharper. You begin to hear the language of the wagon more clearly. You hear the whine of the wind as it passes over the iron tires of the wheels. You hear the creak of the wooden hoops as they bend under the weight of the ice. You even hear the tiny rustle of the straw on the floor as a mouse moves in its sleep. Each sound tells a story. The snap of a rope tells you the wind is pulling hard. The thud of a falling ice chunk tells you the roof is still strong. You are like a sailor, listening to the sounds of a wooden ship in the middle of the ocean. The darkness makes you feel like you are floating. Without a floor or walls that you can see, your body loses its sense of where it is. You feel like you could be in a tiny box or a giant cathedral. To ground yourself, you press your back harder against the sack of flour. You feel the hardness of the grain and the rough texture of the burlap bag. This is real. This is solid. You reach down and touch the cold iron band of the barrel. The metal is freezing, but it tells you exactly where the edge of your world is. You are mapping your home with your fingertips. You think about the night shift of the stars. Even though you cannot see them, you know they are up there, moving across the sky in their steady patterns. You think about the North Star, which has guided you for so many miles. It is still there, hidden behind the white wall of the storm. The thought that the universe is still moving in its proper order helps you feel less lost. The darkness is just a curtain that has been pulled shut for a while. It doesn't mean the world has gone away. It just means it is resting. You take a slow, deep breath. The air is cold and smells of wet wool and old wood. You realize that you have stopped being afraid of the dark. In the city, the dark is where the monsters live, but out here, the dark is just a place of rest. It is a time for your body to save its strength. You let your eyes stay open, staring into the blackness, and you realize that you are seeing light that isn't really there. Your brain is making up tiny sparks and swirls of color to fill the void. It is a beautiful show, a private gallery of lights just for you. You listen to the rhythmic breathing of the group again. It has become a steady, comforting whoosh, whoosh sound. It reminds you of the wind in the pines, or the sound of the distant river. You feel a deep sense of peace. You are the watchman of the dark. You are the one who is awake to experience the total silence of the world. It is a rare thing to be this alone and yet this connected to everything around you. You are part of the night, part of the storm, and part of the wagon. The night shift is a time of waiting, and the darkness is the best place to wait. It takes away the distractions of the road and the work. It leaves you with only your thoughts and your breath. You find yourself thinking about the morning. You imagine the first pale line of light cutting through the canvas. You imagine the shapes of the barrels and the faces of your friends appearing out of the shadows. But for now, you are content to stay in the black. You are safe. You are warm enough. You are alive. You close your eyes, even though it makes no difference, and you let the darkness wrap around you like a heavy velvet cloak. The watch goes on, and the deep night remains. You reach out into the blackness once more, your fingers searching for something familiar. You find the cold, smooth surface of a metal lamp. This is a Betty lamp. In the 19th century, this was a very common tool for people who lived in cabins or travelled in wagons. It is a small iron or brass pot shaped a bit like a pear, with a lid on top and a little spout for a wick. Unlike the fancy glass lamps you might see in a big city house, a Betty lamp was made to be tough. It has a heavy hook and a sharp spike attached to it, so you could hang it from a wooden hoop or poke the spike directly into a timber to keep it steady while the wagon moved. This is a historical fact. Betty lamps were often filled with tallow or even fish oil. Because they used these thick fats, they didn't give off a very bright light, and they often smelled a bit like a kitchen after a big dinner. But they were very reliable. Tonight, however, the lamp is cold. You do not dare light it. The air in the wagon is too tight, and the risk of a spark hitting the dry straw on the floor is too great. You simply hold the metal in your hand, feeling the weight of it. It feels solid and real in a world that has become nothing but wind and shadow. You run your thumb over the small lid of the lamp. You can feel the residue of the oil on the metal. It feels slippery and a little bit sticky. This is a moment of micro-history. People used to call the oil inside liquid gold because it was so precious. Without oil or candles, the night was a wall you could not climb. You think about the grease you used for the wagon wheels and the oil used to treat the canvas. Every part of your survival depends on these fats and oils. They are the things that keep the friction away and keep the water out. Even the oil from your own skin is helping to keep your hands from cracking in the dry, freezing air. In the atmospheric silence of the dark, you lift the lamp and give it a very gentle shake. You hear a soft, muffled slosh from inside. This is a good sound. It means you still have fuel. It means that when the sun finally comes up and you are safe to light a fire, you will have a way to bring light into the corners of your life again. You hold the lamp against your chest, letting the cold metal pull a little bit of heat from your coat. It feels like you are holding a small, sleeping animal. You find yourself talking to it in your head, promising it that its time to shine will come soon. The darkness makes the lamp feel much bigger than it really is. Because you cannot see its edges, your mind imagines it as a great, heavy anchor. You use it to stay focused. You focus on the texture of the iron, the hinge of the lid, and the sharp point of the spike. It gives your hands something to do so they don't get restless. You are learning that in the night shift, your hands need to be busy even when they are not working. If they stay too still, they start to feel the cold more. By exploring the lamp with your fingers, you are keeping the blood moving and keeping your mind sharp. You think about the word torch. In British English, a torch is what people today call a flashlight. But back then, a torch was a piece of wood soaked in pitch or fat that you set on fire. You realize that you are like a torch that hasn't been lit yet. You have the fuel inside you, the food you ate, the warmth of your breath, and you are just waiting for the morning to strike the match. You feel a sense of potential. You are not just a victim of the storm. You are a source of heat and life that is simply waiting for its moment. The wind gives a long, low whistle through the front of the wagon. It sounds like a flute being played by a giant. You listen to the way the sound changes as the wind moves around the metal lamp in your lap. The lamp makes a tiny clink as it taps against a button on your coat. It is a very small sound, but it feels as loud as a bell in the quiet. You realize how much you have come to love these tiny noises. They are the only things that break up the long, heavy hours. You reach up and feel for the wooden hoop above your head. You find the spot where you usually hang the lamp. You feel the small hole in the wood where the spike has been pressed in many times before. You don't hang it up now, but just finding the spot makes you feel better. It reminds you that there is a place for everything. There is a routine to your life, even in the middle of a blizzard. You know where your tools are. You know where your food is. You are the master of this small wooden kingdom. You take a slow, deep breath, smelling the faint, metallic scent of the iron. It is a clean, sharp smell that cuts through the heavy scent of the wet wool for a second. You feel a sense of calm. The lamp is a symbol of the night shift. It is the tool of the watcher. By holding it, you are accepting your job as the guardian of the wagon. You are the one who will make sure the light returns. You settle back into your nest, the lamp resting safely in your hands, and you wait. The darkness is still total, but the weight of the iron in your palms makes it feel less empty. You are not just waiting for the sun, you are holding on to the promise of the fire. You close your eyes and imagine the tiny yellow flame of the Betty lamp flickering in the dark. You can see the way it would light up the faces of your friends and the wood of the walls. It is a beautiful dream. You hold on to that dream as the wind roars and the ice taps on the roof. The watch continues, and the lamp stays ready. The air has become so cold now that a new sound has joined the night. It is a slow crackle, like the sound of dry leaves being crushed, but it is coming from the floorboards beneath your feet. You reach down and touch the wood, but your fingers do not find the rough grain of the pine. Instead, they find something smooth, hard, and painfully cold. A layer of ice has begun to form on the very floor of the wagon. The moisture from the damp air and the mist of your breath has settled on the boards and frozen solid. The wood is no longer just wood. It has become a slippery sheet of white frost. This is a historical fact about life on the trail. The floors of these wagons were never truly insulated. Because the box of the wagon sat high up on the axles, the freezing wind could blow underneath the floor as easily as it blew over the roof. This meant the floor was often the coldest place in the entire wagon. Pioneers called this the frost floor. To fight it, they would sometimes use oilcloth, a heavy fabric treated with linseed oil, to make it waterproof to cover the boards, but even that would eventually turn into a sheet of ice on a night like this. You move your feet very carefully. You do not want to slip and bump into the crates or the people sleeping near you. The ice makes a tiny snap sound every time you move. It is a moment of atmospheric silence. You listen to the frost growing. It is a slow, quiet power. It doesn't roar like the wind, but it is just as strong. It is turning your home into an icebox. You realize that you cannot sit directly on the floor anymore. The ice will pull the heat right out of your body. You have to stay on top of your nest of straw and blankets. This is a moment of micro-history. Many pioneers carried a foot warmer. This was a small metal box with holes in the top and a little door on the side. Inside, you would place a few glowing coals from the campfire. You don't have a foot warmer tonight because you cannot have fire, but you remember the feeling of it. You remember how the warmth would seep through your boots and make your toes tingle. Without it, you have to use your own cleverness. You take a heavy woolen rug and fold it 3 times to make a thick cushion between you and the frozen floor. You sit back and feel the difference. The extra layers of wool block the bite of the ice. You feel a small sense of victory. The storm is trying to freeze you from the bottom up, but you have found a way to stay above it. You are learning that survival is a game of inches. It is about an inch of wool, an inch of straw, and an inch of wall. And it. If you can keep those small spaces between you and the cold, you will win. You listen to the wind as it hits the bottom of the wagon. It sounds like a ghost trying to find a way through the floorboards, but the ice you were worried about is actually helping now. It has sealed the cracks, making the floor airtight. The ice on the floor makes the darkness feel different. Even though you cannot see it, you can feel the whiteness of the frost. It changes the way the air smells. It takes away the dusty scent of the flour and replaces it with a sharp, metallic smell. It is the smell of the deep winter. It is clean and cold, like the smell of a frozen lake. You take a slow breath and feel the coldness of the ice floor in the back of your throat. You are living inside a giant icicle, and yet you are still warm. You are still a living, breathing person. You think about the term winter quarters. This was the place where pioneer groups would stop and build small log cabins to stay in for the whole winter. If the snow got too deep, they would use mud and moss to fill the gaps between the logs to keep the frost out. You realize your wagon is a traveling winter quarter. It is not as thick as a log cabin, but it is doing the same job. It is your fortress. Even with the ice on the floor, it is better than being out in the white void. You reach out and touch the iron tire of a spare wheel tucked in the corner. It is covered in a thick layer of hoarfrost. This is a special kind of frost that looks like tiny white needles or hair. It happens when the damp air turns straight into ice without becoming water first. The needles are very delicate. When you touch them, they turn into a tiny puff of white dust. It is a beautiful thing to find in the middle of such a hard night. It reminds you that the cold can create pretty things, even if it is dangerous. The night shift feels very long now. Your body is tired of being still, and your mind is tired of the dark. But you know you cannot give up. You have to keep watching the ice. You have to make sure it doesn't reach your blankets. You lean your head back and try to find a rhythm in the sounds of the storm, the crackle of the floor, the thump of the wind, and the huff of the oxen. It is a symphony of survival. You are the conductor, keeping everything in its place. You take a deep, slow breath. The air is so cold it makes your teeth ache, but you don't mind. You are proud of your little wooden box. You are proud of the way it is holding up against the ice and the wind. You are part of a long history of people who have faced the winter and lived to tell the story. You settle into your woolen cushion, tuck your hands deep into your sleeves, and wait for the ice to stop growing. The night is almost over, and you are still the master of the watch. The night has reached that strange, heavy time when it feels as if the sun has forgotten the world. You have been sitting in the dark for so many hours that you can no longer remember what the sky looks like when it is blue. Your eyes are open, but they see nothing but the deep velvet of the shadows. This is the hardest part of the night shift. It is the time when your mind starts to play tricks on you, making you think you hear voices in the wind or see flashes of light that aren't really there. You are waiting for the dawn, but the dawn feels like a dream from another life. In the 1800s, people did not have watches that glowed in the dark. This is a historical fact. Pioneers measured time at night by the feeling in their bodies or the changing sounds of the world outside. Without a clock, a single hour can feel as long as a whole day. You try to count the seconds to keep your mind busy. 1, 2, 3. But you soon lose track. You are living in a world where time has stopped moving in a straight line. It has become a circle, looping around and around the sound of the wind and the smell of the damp wool. You find yourself thinking about the term the graveyard watch. This was the name sailors gave to the shift between midnight and 4 in the morning. It is called that because it is the quietest, coldest, and loneliest time of the night. In this atmospheric silence, you feel the truth of that name. The world feels dead. buried under the heavy white blanket of the snow. You are the only thing moving, the only thing breathing. It is a big responsibility to be the one spark of life in such a vast, frozen place. You pull your blankets tighter, feeling the weight of the hours pressing down on your shoulders. This is a moment of microhistory. To help pass the time, some pioneers would carry a tally stick. This was a simple piece of wood where you would carve a small notch for every important event or every hour that passed. You reach out and find a small wooden lathe near the side of the wagon. You don't have a knife to carve it, but you run your fingernail over the smooth surface. You imagine the notches you would make for this night. A notch for the first flake of snow, a notch for the freezing of the floor, a notch for the long, slow wait for the light. The darkness makes you think about the stars, even though you cannot see them through the thick canvas and heavy clouds. You know they are there. You think about the Big Dipper and how it slowly turns around the North Star. You imagine its position in the sky right now. If it were a clear night, the stars would be so bright they would look like holes poked in a black sheet, letting the light of heaven shine through. Thinking about the stars helps you feel less trapped. It reminds you that there is a giant universe outside this small wooden box, and it is all moving exactly the way it should. You listen to the wind. It has changed its tune again. Instead of a roar, it has become a long, tired sigh. It sounds like the storm is getting worn out just like you, but you know better than to trust it. The winter is a clever enemy. It often gets quiet just before it hits you with its strongest blast. You stay vigilant. You move your fingers slowly inside your sleeves to keep the blood flowing. You wiggle your toes against the frozen floorboards, making sure they are still awake. You are the watchman, and you cannot let your guard down just because the world is quiet. You think about the word fortitude. Back in the 19th century, this was a very important word. It means having the strength to keep going, even when things are hard and you are tired. It is not the same as being a hero. It is just the strength of a stone that stays in place while the river rushes over it. You are practicing fortitude right now. You are staying in your spot. You are keeping your heat. You are waiting for the sun to do its job. You feel a quiet sense of pride in your own steadiness. The air in the wagon is very cold, but it has a still quality to it, because you have plugged the gaps and the ice has sealed the floor. The air isn't moving much. This makes it easier to breathe. You take a slow, deep breath and hold it. You feel the life inside you, the warmth of your heart and the power of your lungs. You are a small machine, burning the fuel of that hardtack and dried apple to keep the ice at bay. You are winning the battle, 1 minute at a time. You look toward the front of the wagon. You are looking for the first grey. This is what pioneers called the tiny change in the dark that happens just before the sun starts to rise. It isn't light yet, but the blackness starts to look a little bit thinner, like a piece of cloth that has been washed too many times. You stare at the front flap until your eyes ache, but the black is still solid. You realize you have to be patient. The sun has its own schedule, and it will not hurry for anyone. You settle back into your nest of grain bags. The night shift is almost over, but these last hours are the longest of all. You close your eyes and listen to the breathing of your companions. It is a slow, steady rhythm that tells you everything is okay. You are all still here. You have survived the snow, the wind, and the ice. You are the masters of the wait. You take a final, deep breath of the cold air and prepare yourself for the very end of the darkness. The light is coming. You just have to stay steady for a little while longer. Just as the night feels like it might never end, a new sound breaks through the steady hum of the wind. It is not the tap, tap, tap of ice or the creak of wood. It is a long, wild cry that seems to come from the very heart of the storm. It starts low, like a moan, and then rises into a high, sharp yip yip. These are the wolves of the plains. In the 1800s, wolves were a constant part of the night shift for anyone traveling west. Their voices can carry for miles over the flat, frozen land, sounding like a ghostly choir singing to the moon that you cannot see. This is a historical fact. Pioneers had a complicated relationship with wolves. While the animals were beautiful, they were also a threat to the livestock. On a night like this, the wolves are not looking for trouble. They are simply trying to stay alive and find their pack in the whiteout. They use their howls like a map made of sound, letting each other know where they are in the blinding snow. To you, sitting in the dark, the sound is a reminder that the wilderness is still very much alive. Even when everything else feels frozen and still, you sit perfectly still, listening to the cry as it fades away. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. The howl leaves a strange echo in your mind, a feeling of being very far away from the world of towns and fences. You realize that you are an uninvited guest in this wild place. The wolves, the wind, and the snow belong here. You are just passing through in your wooden box. It is a humbling thought. It makes you feel small, but it also makes you feel like you are part of a great ancient story. You are the watcher, and the wolves are the singers of the night. This is a moment of micro-history. To protect the oxen from predators at night, pioneers would often arrange their wagons in a big circle called a corral. They would chain the wagons together to make a wooden wall that no animal could easily get through. Inside this circle, the people and the animals were safe. You can hear the clink of the heavy corral chains as the wind pushes against the wagon train. Those iron links are like a promise of safety. They hold the whole group together, turning many separate wagons into one strong fort. The sound of the wolves makes the oxen outside move restlessly. You hear a heavy thud as one of them kicks the wooden side of the wagon. They are nervous. You reach out and tap the wood with your palm, a soft and steady thump, thump, thump. You hope the animal can feel the vibration and know that a friend is nearby. You know that the wolves won't come near the wagons. They are too smart to mess with the iron-smelling machines and the scent of humans. But the oxen don't know that. They only know the sound of the hunter in the dark. You think about the word wilderness. In the old days, this word meant a place where humans had no control. It was a place of will of the beast. Sitting here listening to the wild cries in the storm, you understand that word perfectly. You cannot control the snow. You cannot control the wind. You cannot control the wolves. All you can do is control your own heart. You can choose to be afraid, or you can choose to be steady. You take a slow, deep breath and choose to be steady. You are the master of your own small space, even if the world outside is wild and free. The wind picks up again, and the howls are swallowed by the roar. The darkness feels a little less heavy now that you have heard another living voice, even if it was a wild one. It reminds you that the morning is coming. Animals have a sense for the light long before humans do. If the wolves are active, it might mean the worst of the storm has passed. You look toward the front of the wagon again. Is the blackness turning a very dark blue? It is hard to tell. Your eyes want it to be true so badly that they might be lying to you. You find a small piece of jerked beef in your pocket. This is meat that has been salted and dried until it is as hard as leather. You put a small piece in your mouth and chew it slowly. The salt makes your mouth water, and the smoky flavor reminds you of the campfires of the past. It is a wild food for a wild night. You feel a bit more like a pioneer now, a person of the trail who can handle the cold and the cries of the wolves. You are not a city person anymore. You are a person of the plains. You think about the night shift of the forest. The owls that hunt in the dark, the foxes that run through the snow, and the deer huddling in the thickets. You are all doing the same thing. You are all waiting for the sun to return. You feel a sense of kinship with the natural world. You aren't fighting it, you are just coexisting with it. The wolves have their path, and you have yours. Tonight, those paths are crossed in the dark, and you are both better for it. The wagon sways one more time, a slow and gentle movement. The night shift is moving into its final hour. You settle back, the taste of the salt on your tongue, and the sound of the wild in your ears. You are ready for whatever comes next. The wolves have gone quiet. The wind is sighing, and the world is holding its breath for the first hint of the dawn. You are the watchman, and you are still here, standing your ground in the heart of the winter. You have been sitting still for so long that your body feels like it is made of the same heavy wood as the wagon. Your legs are stiff, and your back feels like a frozen board. But you remember the rule. You must keep the blood moving. If the blood stops flowing to your furthest parts, the cold will take hold. Very slowly, without breaking your bubble of warm air, you begin to move your fingers inside your sleeves. You do not move your arms or your shoulders, you only move your hands. It is a very small, secret dance happening in the dark. In the 1800s, people knew a lot about how to keep the body going during a long wait. This is a historical fact. Pioneers practiced what they called internal warming. They knew that by tensing and relaxing their muscles very slowly, they could create heat without needing to run around or use a fire. It was a quiet way to exercise while staying tucked under a blanket. You squeeze your hands into tight fists, holding them for a count of 5, and then you let them go. You feel a tiny wave of warmth move from your palms up to your wrists. It is a small victory, a tiny spark of life in your tired limbs. You reach out and feel the texture of what you are wearing on your hands. This is a moment of micro-history. You are wearing a pair of mitts. These are not like modern gloves with 5 separate fingers. Instead, they have one large space for your forefingers and a separate thumb. Pioneers preferred mitts because they allowed your fingers to touch each other. When your fingers are together, they can share their heat, just like the people huddling in the wagon. Your mitts are made of thick boiled wool. This means the wool was washed in hot soapy water until it became very tight and felt almost like soft felt. This made them much better at blocking the wind. Inside the mitts, your fingers move against each other. You feel the rough wool and the warmth of your own skin. You begin to play an imaginary piano against the palm of your hand. Tap, tap, tap. You move each finger one by one. You focus all your thoughts on the tips of your fingers. You imagine the red blood flowing down your arms, through your wrists, and into the very ends of your hands. You imagine it carrying the heat from your heart. It is a very deep way to think. In this atmospheric silence, you can almost hear the soft click of your knuckles as they move. The sound is tiny, but in the total quiet, it sounds like a branch breaking. You realize that your body is a very clever machine. Even when you are tired and cold, it is still working for you. It is busy turning the food you ate into energy. It is busy keeping your internal temperature exactly where it needs to be. You feel a new sense of respect for yourself. You are not just a passenger on this journey, you are the engine. Every small movement you make is a way of saying, I am still here. You are refusing to let the frost turn you into a statue. You are staying soft and moving in a world that has gone hard and still. The darkness is still heavy, but the movement of your fingers makes it feel less like a prison. You think about the night shift workers who have to use their hands in the cold, the men on the whaling ships in the North Sea, or the miners digging for coal by the light of a small candle. They all know the importance of keeping their hands moving. They all know the feeling of the blood returning to cold fingers. You feel a connection to every person who has ever had to work or wait in the winter dark. You are all part of the same night shift. You decide to try moving your toes as well. This is harder because your stoga boots are so stiff and cold. You press your toes down against the frozen straw, then lift them up. Crunch, crunch. The sound of the straw is a good sign. It means you are still strong enough to push back against the world. You do this 10 times, then 20. Slowly, the numb feeling in your feet begins to change. It becomes a dull ache, and then a faint tingle. It is not exactly warm, but it is alive. That is all you need right now. You think about the word vigilance. This was a word people used a lot on the trail. It means staying awake and being ready for anything. You are being vigilant with your own body. You are not letting the sleepiness or the cold take over. You are the watchman of your own skin and bone. You take a slow, deep breath, feeling your chest expand against your heavy coat. You feel the strength in your lungs. You are doing a good job. You are keeping the watch, and you are keeping yourself ready for the morning. The wind gives the wagon a gentle nudge, as if it is checking to see if you are still awake. You answer with another small movement of your hands. You are still here. You are still moving. You are still warm. You settle back against the grain bag, feeling the tingle in your fingers and toes. It is a comforting feeling. It tells you that you have what it takes to finish the night. The light cannot be far away now. You have done the hard work of the middle hours, and you have come through it. You close your eyes and focus on the rhythm of your own pulse. You feel it in your neck, in your wrists, and even in your fingertips. It is a steady, quiet thump thump. It is the sound of life continuing. You find yourself smiling in the dark. You have learned how to be still and how to move at the same time. You have learned how to be a part of the wagon and yet remain a person. You are ready for the final stretch. The night shift is moving toward its end, and you are steady as the oak wood around you. You keep moving, one tiny finger tap at a time. The air around the wagon has grown heavy and strangely thick. For hours, the world has been a place of roaring sound and shaking wood. But now, the noise is beginning to fade. It's not a sudden stop, but a slow, gradual sinking, as if the storm is finally running out of breath. The high-pitched scream of the wind through the ropes has dropped to a low whistle, and then to a soft hum. You sit in the dark, and for the first time since the sun went down, you can hear the absolute silence of the wilderness. It is a silence so deep that it feels as if the whole world has been wrapped in a thick layer of cotton wool. In the 1800s, this was often the most dangerous part of a blizzard. This is a historical fact. When the wind dies down, the temperature often drops even further. Without the wind to mix the air, the heavy cold sinks to the ground and stays there. Pioneers called this the deep freeze. You can feel the air becoming even sharper in your lungs. It feels heavy, as if the cold has a physical weight that is pressing against the wagon walls. Everything is perfectly still. There is no swaying, no creaking, and no rattling of tin plates. The wagon has stopped being a ship and has become a solid, silent house once more. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You find yourself holding your breath, almost afraid to break the quiet. You can hear the tiny crackle of the ice on the canvas as it settles. You can hear the soft rhythmic huff of the oxen outside, sounding much clearer now that the wind is gone. You realize that the storm has done its work. It has covered the world in a new white skin and reshaped the land. In this quiet, you feel a sense of awe. The power of the winter is not just in its noise, but in this massive freezing stillness that follows. This is a moment of micro-history. To see if the air was getting colder, pioneers would sometimes look at their water bucket. If the ice on top was clear, the cold was steady. If the ice was white and bubbly, it meant the temperature was dropping very fast. You reach out and touch the surface of the small bucket near your feet. Your fingers find a thick, solid layer of ice. You press down on it, but it does not break. It is as hard as stone. This tells you that the night shift has become a test of pure endurance. You are no longer fighting the wind. You are just surviving the deep, still cold. The silence makes the wagon feel much larger. Without the wind pushing on the walls, the space seems to open up. You can sense the corners of the wagon that you haven't touched in hours. You can feel the presence of the other people more clearly. You hear a soft sigh from across the wagon and the rustle of a woolen blanket. Everyone is awake and everyone is listening to the new quiet. It is a shared moment of relief. The shaking is stopped. You are no longer being tossed around. You are on solid ground again. You think about the word hush. This is a word people use to describe the world after a big snow. It is a special kind of quiet because the snow absorbs all sound. Back in the towns, the sound of carriage wheels and footsteps would be muffled by the white blanket. Out here, the hush is even bigger. There are no wheels and no footsteps. There is only the snow, miles and miles of it, sitting perfectly still under the dark sky. You feel like you are the only person left in the world. It is a lonely feeling, but also a very peaceful one. You take a slow, deep breath. The air is so cold it feels like it might freeze the inside of your chest, but it is also very fresh. The dust from the trail has been buried, and the smell of the damp wool is starting to fade as the moisture turns to hard frost. You feel a sense of clarity. The night shift is moving into its final phase. The storm has had its say, and now it is time for the world to wait for the light. You feel a quiet strength growing in your heart. You have lasted through the roar, and you can last through the silence. You reach down and adjust the straw around your boots one more time. The crunch of the dry stalks is very loud in the quiet. You find yourself moving more slowly now, as if you are trying to match the pace of the world outside. There is no hurry. There is no wind to rush you. There is only the steady, slow passage of time. You look toward the front of the wagon, where the canvas flaps are. The blackness there looks a tiny bit different. It isn't light, but it isn't the solid black of midnight either. It is the color of deep water. You think about the night watchman in a big city, walking his beat and calling out, "All is well." You feel like saying those words yourself. The wind is gone. The wagon is standing. The animals are breathing. The people are safe. All is well. Even if it is freezing, you have done your job. You have stayed awake and kept the watch. You have protected the small spark of life in the middle of the big white silence. You feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You settle back into your nest, letting your head rest against the hard sack of grain. The silence wraps around you like a heavy, cold blanket. You close your eyes and listen to the nothingness. It is a beautiful sound, the sound of a storm that has finally gone to sleep. You are still the master of the wagon, and you are still the guardian of the night. The morning is very close now. You can feel it in the air. You take one more slow, deep breath and wait for the very first hint of the sun. The silence is your friend, and the night is almost done. The long, heavy weight of the darkness is finally beginning to lift. You have been staring at the front of the wagon for so many hours that your eyes feel tired and scratchy, but now you see something new. It is not a bright light, and it is not the sun. It is just a very slow change in the color of the world. The deep, solid black of the night is turning into a very dark blue, and then into a soft, misty grey. This is the moment pioneers called the grey dawn. It is the time when the shapes of the world start to come back, appearing slowly like a drawing being made on a dusty chalkboard. In the 1800s, the dawn was the most important time of the day for people on the trail. This is a historical fact. Pioneers usually woke up long before the sun was actually up so they could start their work. They called this early rising, and it was the only way to make sure they traveled enough miles before the heat of the day or the next storm arrived. On a morning like this, after a big blizzard, the dawn does not bring warmth, but it brings something just as important. It brings the ability to see. You can finally see the wooden hoops above your head and the outline of the barrels in the corners. The night shift of the dark is ending, and the shift of the morning is about to begin. You sit perfectly still and watch the night grow. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. The world is so quiet that you can hear the tiny tink of the frost on the canvas as the light touches it. The grey light is very cold and very soft. It doesn't have any shadows yet. Everything in the wagon looks flat and pale. You look at your own hands. They look ghostly in the dim light, covered in the grey dust of the wool and the tiny white crystals of the frost. You realize that you have made it. You have sat through the entire night, and the sun is finally on its way back to you. This is a moment of microhistory. As the light grows, you look for a special tool that every pioneer kept close at hand. It is a lucifer box. This was a small tin or wooden box that held your matches. In the 19th century, matches were often called lucifers because they smelled of sulfur when you lit them. You find the box in your pocket and hold it. You don't light one yet, but just seeing the box in the grey light makes you feel a sense of hope. The light in the sky is the promise that soon you will be able to have a real fire, a real breakfast, and a real chance to move forward. The grey light reveals the battlefield of the night. You can see how much the wagon has changed. The floor is covered in a thin, white crust of ice. The sacks of flour are decorated with patterns of frost that look like tiny lace doilies. The canvas roof is sagging low under the weight of the snow and sleet. You see the gaps you plugged with bits of cloth, and you see the small piles of snow that still manage to find their way inside. It looks like a different place than the one you entered last night. It is a world made of ice and wood, all painted in shades of grey. You look at the people around you. In the new light, they look like statues coming to life. You see the frost on their eyelashes and the way their breath still makes small clouds in the air. Their faces are pale and tired, but as they open their eyes and see the grey light, you see a small smile on their lips. No one speaks yet. The silence of the morning is too beautiful to break. You all just sit there for a minute, acknowledging the light. You have shared the dark together, and now you are sharing the dawn. You are no longer alone in the black. You can see your friends again. You think about the word aurora. While we use that word for the northern lights today, back then, many people used it to mean the very first light of the morning. You watch the aurora of the trail as it turns from grey into a very pale, cold pink. The pink is so light, it is almost white, like the inside of a seashell. It touches the top of the canvas roof, making the ice crystals sparkle for the first time. It is a tiny bit of beauty in a very hard world. You feel a sense of wonder. After all the noise and the fear of the night, the morning is coming back with such gentleness. The light makes you realize how much work is waiting for you. You can see the snow piled up against the front flaps of the wagon. It is a solid wall of white. You know that soon you will have to take your shovel and dig your way out. You will have to check on the oxen and see how much snow has buried the wheels. But for right now, you just enjoy the seeing. You enjoy the way the light picks out the grain of the wood and the texture of the burlap bags. The world is becoming real again. The night shift of the imagination is over, and the real world is taking its place. You take a slow, deep breath. The air is still freezing, but it doesn't feel as heavy as it did at midnight. The light seems to make the air feel thinner and cleaner. You move your arms, feeling the crackle of the frozen wool of your coat. You are stiff and sore, but you are alive. You are the watchman who has seen the night through to the end. You have kept the spark going, and now the sun is coming to take over the job. You feel a deep, quiet sense of pride. You did not give up. You did not let the cold win. You settle back for one last moment of quiet. The grey is turning into a bright, cold silver. You can hear the first sounds of the other wagons waking up. You hear a distant thump of a shovel and the low moo of a cow. The community is coming back to life. The long wait is over. You watch the silver light move across the floor of the wagon, touching the ice and making it shine like diamonds. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. You are ready for the morning. You are ready to dig out. You are ready to continue the journey. The light is here, and you are here to meet it. The grey light is now strong enough that you can see the shapes of the world clearly, but it also reveals a new problem. As you look toward the front and the back of the wagon, you do not see the open air or the horizon. Instead, you see a solid wall of white. The snow has drifted so high during the night that it has completely buried the lower half of the wagon. You are tucked inside a cold white tunnel. You realize that your work for the morning is not to walk, but to dig. The night shift of sitting still has ended, and the morning shift of hard, physical work is about to begin. You move toward the front of the wagon, your boots making a sharp crunch on the ice-covered floorboards. Remember that linchpin we talked about? The tiny bit of iron that holds the wheel on? Right now it is buried under 3 feet of frozen powder. You reach for a tool hanging near the driver's seat. It is a grain shovel. In the 1800s, this was a very common tool, made of wood, with a thin strip of iron along the edge to keep the wood from wearing down. It is light, which is good, because you are going to have to lift a lot of snow before you can even see your oxen. This is a historical fact about the morning after a blizzard. The snow on the plains was often blown into drifts that could be 10 or 15 feet high. While the ground might be clear in one spot, a wagon just a few feet away could be completely covered. You push your shovel into the white wall at the front of the wagon. It is not soft like the snow you remember from your childhood. This snow has been packed tight by the wind. It feels more like soft white stone. You have to push hard with your shoulder to get the shovel to bite into the drift. As you take the first shovelful and toss it out, a burst of very cold, very fresh air hits your face. It is like a cold drink of water after a long, dry walk. It wakes up your skin and makes your lungs feel wide and clear. You dig faster now, your muscles starting to warm up from the movement. It feels good to move. It feels good to use your strength after sitting like a statue for so many hours. You create a small opening, and for the first time in 12 hours, you see the world outside. The world is a blinding, brilliant white. The sun has not yet cleared the hills, but the sky is a very pale, clear blue. There is no wind at all. The silence is absolute. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop digging for a second and just look. The trail is gone. The bushes are gone. The world has been made flat and smooth, like a giant sheet of white paper. It is beautiful, but it is also a bit scary. Without the trail, how will you find your way? You realize that you will have to wait for the sun to get higher so you can use the shadows to find the landmarks. This is a moment of micro-history. To protect their eyes from the bright white snow, pioneers would sometimes make snow spectacles. They didn't have dark glass, so they would take a piece of wood or leather and cut 2 very thin slits in it. By looking through these tiny slits, they could block out most of the glare from the sun hitting the snow. This stops them from getting snow blindness, a painful condition where your eyes get sunburned from the bright light. You reach into your jockey box and find your leather spectacles. You put them on and the world becomes a bit darker and easier to look at. You keep digging. You can hear the sounds of your neighbors now. From every wagon in the corral, you hear the thump and scrape of shovels. You see a head pop up out of a drift 20 feet away. It is your friend from the next wagon. He looks at you and gives a small wave. He doesn't say anything, and neither do you. The work is too important for talking. You both know what needs to be done. You have to find the animals. You dig your way toward the front where the oxen are tied. You see a large, white mound that seems to be breathing. It is the lead ox. He is almost completely covered in snow, with only his nose and the tips of his horns poking out. The heat from his body has melted a small cave in the snow around him. You carefully shovel the snow away from his legs. As you clear the white powder, you see the thick, dark fur and the heavy muscles of the beast. He looks at you with a big, calm eye and lets out a long huff of steam. He is cold and his fur is matted with ice, but he is alive. You feel a huge wave of relief. Checking the oxen is a slow job. You have to be careful not to hit them with the shovel. You also have to check their feet for ice balls. This is when snow gets packed into the space between their hooves and turns into hard ice, which can make them go lame. You reach down and use a small wooden pick to clear the hooves. The animal stands perfectly still, trusting you to help him. You feel a deep bond with these big creatures. You have all made it through the night together. The sun begins to peek over the edge of the world. It is a bright, cold yellow light that makes the snow sparkle like millions of tiny diamonds. You have to squint, even with your leather spectacles. The light is so strong it feels like it has weight. It touches the frozen canvas of your wagon, and you hear the first drip of the melting ice. The deep freeze is starting to break. You look back at your wagon. It looks small and brave, sitting in the middle of all that white. You see the marks where the wind hit the sides, and the piles of snow you tossed out of the way. You think about the night shift that is finally over. You think about the tap-tap of the ice and the long hours of the dark. It feels like it happened a year ago, not just a few hours ago. The morning has brought a whole new set of tasks. But the fear of the dark is gone. You are no longer waiting. You are doing. You are digging. You are checking. And you are preparing. You are a pioneer, and the trail is waiting for you to find it again. You take a final shovelful of snow and toss it far to the side. You have cleared a path from the back of the wagon to the front. You have cleared the oxen. You have cleared the wheels. You are exhausted and your arms ache, but you feel a sense of triumph. You have outlasted the storm. You have dug your way back into the world. You stand there for a moment, leaning on your shovel, and watch the sun rise higher into the sky. The white world is big and cold, but you are bigger because you are still here. You are ready for the final step. You are ready to see the morning in full. The sun has finally climbed above the horizon, and the world is transformed. The pale greys and blues of the dawn have been replaced by a light so bright and golden that it feels like a warm hand touching your face. It is a strange thing to see such beauty after a night of such hardship. The snow, which was your enemy only a few hours ago, now sparkles with every colour of the rainbow. The long white drifts look like frozen waves on a sea of milk. You stand by the side of your wagon, your breathing slow and deep, and you realise that the night shift is officially over. In the 1800s, the first clear morning after a blizzard was a time of great relief, but also great caution. This is a historical fact. Even though the sun was out, the danger was not gone. The snow could hide deep holes or sinkholes, where the oxen might fall and break a leg. Pioneers had to move with extreme care, often sending a man ahead with a long pole to sound the snow, poking it to make sure the ground was solid. You see the leader of your wagon train doing exactly this, his dark figure standing out sharply against the white land. You turn your attention back to your own small world. You see the others from your wagon stepping out into the light. They look different now. In the dark, they were just shadows and heartbeats, but now they are people again. You see the red colour returning to their cheeks. You see them stretching their stiff limbs and squinting at the sun. This is a moment of atmospheric silence. No one feels the need to shout or celebrate. The relief is too deep for that. You just look at each other and nod. You have shared a very long journey through the dark, and that bond doesn't need many words. This is a moment of micro-history. One of your companions reaches into a small wooden box and pulls out a striker. This is a piece of high-carbon steel, shaped like a large D. By hitting it against a sharp piece of flint, they create a shower of bright orange sparks. They catch the sparks in a nest of dry tow and thin wood shavings. Within minutes, a small brave fire is crackling in a spot you cleared of snow. You see the first thin blue line of smoke rising straight up into the still air. That smoke is the signal that the day has truly begun. You walk over to the fire and hold out your hands. The heat is sharp and wonderful. It feels like it is melting the ice right out of your bones. You look at the oxen, who are now standing patiently in the sun, their dark hides steaming as the frost turns to vapour. They are ready to pull again. They are ready to tilt again. They are ready to take the next 1,000 steps. You feel a sense of profound respect for the indifference and power of the winter wilderness. It didn't try to kill you, and it didn't try to save you. It was just there, and you simply had to exist alongside it. The sun is rising higher, and the shadows are becoming short and sharp. You see the trail again, or at least the general direction where it used to be. The world is calling you forward. You have survived the night shift of the blizzard, and you have come out the other side with a new understanding of what it means to be alive. You are not the same person who climbed into the wagon last night. You are stronger, quieter, and more patient. You have learned that the dark always ends and the sun always returns, as long as you have the fortitude to wait for it. The world is moving again. You can hear the clack of wooden yokes and the calls of the drivers. The heavy wheels are beginning to turn, breaking through the crust of the ice with a sound like crushing glass. But for you, the work is done for now. You have finished your watch. You have protected the life inside the wooden box. You can feel the warmth of the sun soaking through your heavy wool coat, reaching all the way to your heart. The air is becoming softer, and the sharp bite of the frost is fading into a gentle coolness. You are safe. You are warm. You are surrounded by your friends and your loyal animals. The journey will be long, and there will be more storms, but you know now that you can face them. You have found the strength that lives in the silence and the stillness. You have learned the secrets of the winter night. The sun is rising. The gates are opening. The watch is ended.